I am Mary Sullivan, City of Darien Alderperson for Ward 5. I serve as the chairperson for the Administrative and Finance Committee. I would like to call to order this committee of a whole with city alderpersons, our mayor, city treasurer, city administrator, senior staff present in the city council chambers. We will review, discuss, and conduct Q&A and come to a consensus on the fiscal year 2026 budget. The document you all have received is a collaborative effort of Mayor Marquez, City Administrator Vanna, Treasurer Korn, and city staff. I will serve as your facilitator for tonight and the following meetings. Tonight is the first in a series of meetings with the end goal of having a public hearing on the budget and the city council voting to approve on Monday, April 7th. My goal is to complete this review in 2 meetings and conclude tonight around 9:30. We will take a few breaks along the way as needed. The next meeting as a whole will be on Wednesday, February 26th, 1 week from today at 6 p.m. in council chambers. Tonight, we will begin with an overview of the general fund and revenue, along with discussion on the tax abatement. After that, we will review the new Darien Business Alliance and Community Events budget. We will then start to go through municipal services, streets, and capital projects led by Dan Gombeck. That will likely be the lengthiest of our discussions throughout this process. If time still allows, we will also handle water, MFT, and special service areas. The following week, we will start with the police department and Chief Thomas, and then move on to city council and administrative. Ideally, we will get through all of these areas in our first 2 meetings, along with any follow-up from previous discussions. If there is overflow that remains, we can address that on Monday, March 3rd, in conjunction with our city council meeting. All city council members received copies of the fiscal year 2026 budget in advance, along with summary pages and supporting documents. All of this information has been published on the City of Darien website. These meetings are being broadcast on Channel 6 and will be available for viewing on the City of Darien website and our YouTube channel. Mayor Marquez, do you have anything to add?
Let's go.
Okay, Treasurer Korn, do you have anything to add?
Just an opening comment, my sort of come to Jesus moment, as I call it every year. Just remember, what we do is very important. I know a lot of effort's been put in on this, from Brian especially, starting in the late fall and putting these numbers together, and different requests and different things in terms of adding and what we're projecting for the year. And it is important to keep in mind, I mean, even some little differences, so don't be afraid to bring up things that you agree with, disagree with, or whatever, because the bottom line is, if you look at the bottom line of this general fund, you'll see that, capital improvements, which Dan is very aware of and is very important to all of us in the city for maintaining our infrastructure, it gets its revenue basically from transfers from the surplus from the general fund. And if you look at the general fund, this year we transferred $3.5 million to the capital improvement to allow them to do things going forward. Next year, we're projecting that number would drop to about 2.5 million. The year after, about 2 million. The year after that, about 1.5 million. So even though things look good on a static basis, we are reducing the amount that's going into long-term improvement or infrastructure ability. So it is important. So even though we're looking 3 years out and say, oh, who cares about that? It does have an impact. So everything's important. So don't be afraid to bring up whatever you feel is important in this discussion. So that's it.
Great, thank you.
Mike, one correction, that the revised summary sheet I handed out, when I put the pension numbers in, that third year, I reduced that to 1 million.
1 million instead of 1.5
Instead of 1.5,
million.
correct.
So it's even less than I stated. Thank you, Brian. I should have used that. I'm sorry.
Administrative Vanna, you want to take attendance for tonight, please?
Normally these meetings, we just take.
You just take it, you don't need to do a roll call?
Yeah, we won't call the roll.
Okay. Do you have anything to add before we start off?
I don't have anything. I know you had sent me the schedule, so whenever you're ready, I'll just start
Okay.
with the general fund summary.
Okay,
If there's no
so then we're gonna have everyone turn. Administrator Vanna handed out a new general fund summary this evening. It is dated in the upper right-hand corner, 2/18/2025. If everyone could please be looking at that as we move forward.
I'm
And,
sorry, yours I gave you yesterday.
oh, I'm sorry.
The ones today are probably dated 2/19.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So 2/19/2025, the ones that were just handed out this evening. If everyone could have that in front of them as we start. And also, if you want to have handy the memorandum, either open on your computers or hard copy, that was distributed with the budget. Okay, Administrator Vanna, you go ahead.
Thank you, Mary. The draft budget that was presented for the packet tonight does include a cover memo with a pretty thorough narrative of our revenues, our expenses, maybe, it's in paragraph form, what can be expected or what is expected in this draft budget. So once we get past that, it's obviously a bunch of pages with numbers. For the draft budget, we put a lot of backup in. We put sheets. If Dan's requesting a truck, there's a cover sheet with a lot of different information, very thorough. And that's why this packet is typically, more along the lines of a few hundred pages than our final budget. There is a lot of information in there. And I think, as Mike said, as we go along, if there are questions, even that come up even after the meeting tonight, call us anytime and we can get back to you. Some of the questions you might have, I don't know that we would calculate changes or be able to go through that tonight. So if there are questions that we can't answer tonight, we'll get back, check those, and bring them back to the next meeting. So in terms of page 1, again, that's our general fund overview, which consists of several departments, including administration, city council, the business alliance and community events, community development, police, and public works streets. So this cover page has a number of columns, including audited numbers, budgeted numbers, projected numbers. For me, I look at a few columns and I consider those more important in terms of trying to estimate the numbers. So on that sheet, if you go to the third column, it's fiscal year ending 25. It says estimated actual, actual. And so right now, as we go through this fiscal year, we're not done with the fiscal year, but we do try to predict where our final expenses would be if April 30th was tomorrow. And we usually do a pretty good job at certain things, maybe over time, or we were able to buy a truck and we thought we might have to kick it to the next year. But we usually do pretty good on hitting that target. And that's important because wherever we end up between the estimates gives us an estimated starting fund balance for next year. So when I look at these, I again look at those numbers and I'll start looking at then fiscal year 26 budget request. And as the council knows, then we go out with a 2-year forecast. And when we have our revenues, expenses, and our capital projects transfer, we come out here with numbers over 3 years of approximately 4.1 million in ending fund balance, then about 4 million in year 2 and about 4.1 in year 3. And about 4.1 gives us a 90-day reserve, which is pretty traditional what I shoot for in the presentation to the budget. So I think those numbers are good, as a good place to start for the overview, but also then to start working into the revenues and expenses. So if you like, Mary, I could start hitting the revenue, unless there's questions on the overview sheet.
Any questions? On page 1, general fund summary. Okay, go ahead.
Moving forward, page 2, we do have our general fund revenue. It is about a page and a half of various taxes, license, fines and fees, and miscellaneous revenues. I'll talk real quick about the real estate tax. The city council recalls late in the fall, the council is required to approve a tax levy that ultimately gets sent to DuPage County. And on our end, the tax levy, we ask for a dollar amount. We don't do calculations, percentages. We ask for a dollar amount, and the county does calculations that you'll all see on your tax bill come later in this year. So originally on that tax levy request, that ordinance, it approved a levy of $2,971,285. And as we have not done, or the council has not done in many, many years, it included an increase to that request of about $459,000. And when the council approved that, everybody had said, okay, we'll approve that, but we want to come and visit during the budget. So here we are looking at that tax number. So again, at that time, we don't have the budget numbers ready. We don't know everything that's going to happen. As we get closer to now, Both Mayor Marquez and I had discussed this, we looked at this, and the budget presented tonight does include one more year of no property tax increase. And if you look out after that in years 2 and 3, you could see that increase of almost 900,000 in year 2 because we're picking up basically 2 years of police pension increases. So again, as an option for the council, it's presented tonight if you would like to continue the abatement. And I know that question posed to you right now, can't answer it right now, you have to go through the budget, but I just wanted to explain where that was in the real estate tax estimates. Most of the other taxes we have here, some come from estimates that the Illinois Municipal League helps out on, certain state income tax, local use tax. Something like sales tax, which is obviously our biggest number, is pretty hard to predict, but our sales tax has been pretty solid. Actually this year, or prior year, when actually fiscal year ending 24, we were at about almost 7.4 million. And again, that's a hard thing to predict, and as most of the revenues you'll see in the elected officials that have been here for some time know that I'm very conservative on the revenues. And I think where that helps out is when the audit's done, like we did this year, there was an additional surplus to transfer to the capital projects fund. And obviously that's much better than if it went the other way when we were not conservative on the revenues and ended up in a different position where we were actually short in terms of the audit. So you'll see those going out on the sales tax. Really in year 2, I held it flat for what the estimated actual is this year. And in years 2 and 3, it's up slightly. There is one thing the council, we did give an update to the council in, I think, December or January of this year. There's a slight sales tax, I don't know if you call it abatement or a change to the state rate. And that change to the state rate would affect us. We've estimated annually about 300,000 thereabouts. I don't remember the percent, like you or Joe, remember the percent that the state is gonna.
Well, it's 1% sales tax on groceries right now, and the state is going to be discontinuing that effective January of '26. But the state has allowed all municipalities, home rule or non-home rule, to reinstate it on their own. So right now, we're getting $300,000 that gets paid to the state, and then they repay it to us starting January 1st. That's going to go away at the state level, so we're gonna have to make the decision, do we want to reimpose that?
Yeah, and that 1% is only on certain goods.
Yeah, basically food.
Food and things like that, so I really didn't factor that in here other than a little more conservative on the revenue. The question for the council, talked about it briefly, is if the council wants to adjust our sales tax, which would begin in January, to make up for that difference. Now, again, we don't need that answer immediately, but as we go through the budget, recognize that by the end of the budget, we'd like, which could be 2 or 3 meetings, we'd like to have that ironed out so we know going forward. When you have a sales tax increase, there is a time lag between when the council approves the ordinance and you get it to the state, and there's I think it was a 3-month or so time lag between its action, between that and when it's implemented. So we'll revisit that.
Brian, as long as we're on sales tax, but my question is, I know that you took the estimated actual for 2025, and that's what you used for the request budget going forward. But I was just curious as to why do we see, I mean, because our actual numbers are usually pretty close. So between 24 and 25, we're down like 250,000 in sales tax dollars year over year. Now, you did use the lower amount going forward, but I'm just curious, why are we down 250,000?
Well, my hope, Jerry, is when the audits comes, we're not down. There's a very good chance, we have the revenues to date from the state, and there's a bit of a lag time. So the final approximately 4 months, I am estimating revenues coming in, and I'm estimating conservatively. We very well could come up with a number similar to what we did in '24, but I don't want to go on the high end. That's basically it.
And actually, as of January 31st, we're about $250,000 over on the projected budget. So like Brian said, he usually does estimate these conservatively, but it probably should come in closer, a higher number rather than a lower number.
So closer to that 7.4 instead of the 7.1?
I would think so, yes, but.
So just to be
several
clear-
facts-
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Tom.
The estimate in '24 is probably very similar to the estimate in '25.
Right.
It's the actual that went up, not the estimate.
The other thing that does have a bearing on all of this, though, Walmart is one of our bigger sales tax producers, and we have that economic incentive agreement with them, where we get to keep what we were getting from them about 6 or 7 years ago. Anything over that goes back to pay that incentive to them. So if it's a growth in Walmart, we don't see any of that part of it either. You won't see that here, so you could see growth here, but then the economic incentive, which you'll see as an expense item later on in one of the other categories, would also increase to offset that.
1% on the grocery tax, that would involve obviously Jewel, Aldi, and Walmart too, correct?
In Brookhaven.
I'm sorry, and Brookhaven too, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
And any
really,
like we've got a few mini marts in town, you know, I mean, little things, but, yeah. And so Brian, you're saying with the sales tax, you did not factor in, because we're looking at basically with our fiscal year starting May 1st, like, assuming we did nothing about reinstating the grocery tax, we would be down 1%, which could end up being $300,000. So that's not reflected?
correct, that's not
Okay.
reflected in the numbers
Okay.
at all. Again, given their estimates, I just didn't factor
Right,
that in until
right.
we get some direction on.
And-
It would only be 8 months out of this budget.
I'm sorry,
The decrease wouldn't happen until January 1 of '26, which would be, there's only 4 months left
Yeah,
in
there
the
are only
budget.
4 months left.
correct, yes.
But there is, like you said, a whole process, because, I mean, isn't it like by summertime, that decision would have to be made so that
Yeah,
the
I
process
think-
could be moved forward?
I think the statute or the rules from Department of Revenue is approximately 3 months. And there's a certain percent that it's gotta be in quarter increments, so I don't know how that will exactly turn out in terms of trying to make up that exact dollar amount.
Today's Tribune had an excellent article on it. It's got to be in effect as of October 1st, which basically reinforces what Brian's saying about the 3-month lag. So we would have to pass that resolution prior to October in order to get it effective for January. The other thing that was interesting in the article, it basically dealt more with suburban Cook County areas like LaGrange, Burr Ridge, Hinsdale, and that, but they're all starting these discussions in their council meetings now, and there's no unanimity about it. I mean, the reason for the cut, in my mind, was strictly political on Pritzker's part, just to be able to say that, hey, we're cutting 1% of your food and groceries to try and save you some money there. But then he turned around and left it up to the municipalities, which really rely on these dollars for operating, and said, okay, you can reimpose it. So it's a distinction without a difference without a distinction, I guess I'd say. But it is something that we're gonna have to be cognizant of and decide to take action on or not take action on. As Brian said, with respect to the real estate taxes, right now, we're saying, okay, abate them for this year, but then next year, that would be almost $1 million increase, and next year is assuming the police pension numbers come out where they're anticipated. So you'd have $1 million increase there, and 300,000 we'd be looking at imposing in terms of additional sales tax, if we wanted to keep just our sales tax number the same.
Right, and honestly, I don't want us to get ahead of us, because that's a conversation for another day, but by reinstating the 1%, it's like, it would have people would never see it. It wouldn't be like all of a sudden their bill goes down and their bill goes up. It would be almost seamless to the consumer. And obviously, a lot of people that aren't Darien residents shop in our stores, and so, okay.
The $300,000 potential impact, is that based on 12 months?
I'm sorry,
The $300,000 potential impact on the sales tax, is that based on a 12-month period?
yes, that would be an
Okay.
annual amount. And that was calculated, that was already calculated, I think, maybe 6 months, 12 months ago. So I'd look at that number again, but that's a pretty good estimate. It wouldn't fluctuate that much.
Yeah, I mean, there's communities that have a couple Costco's, it's like they have like over $1 million impact, like Bolingbrook. Okay.
So, I think in going through the revenues, everybody's had a chance to look at them. We've gone through this before. At this point, the property tax was a big deal, sales tax, but maybe I could open up the questions if anybody has it, if that would be helpful.
Sure.
Right, I believe, I know Eric had some questions about the property tax and, because when we obviously, because of the process, we had a vote on the levy back in the spring when it was like, we were looking at it kind of with blinders on because we didn't know what the budget would look like, with the caveat that we'd have a chance to revisit it around budget.
Yes.
So,
And just, I wanted to make sure I was clear, on the tax abatement, I've showed here, abating everything to keep it even with last year's extension. But any amount you can abate that was asked for. So if the council decided I don't want to abate the 459,000, it's not all or nothing. There could be somewhere in the middle too. But it's presented here as a full abatement of that difference.
Brian, just remind me, other reimbursements on page 2, shows 50,000 is our estimate, we came in at 110. What is other reimbursements again?
Yeah, there's actually an adjustment I have to make. That is, there are some reimbursements that came in that have now been adjusted to other funds like this police special funds that we use for forfeitures. So that number will be adjusted downward.
Oh, from 110?
Yeah, the money's adjusted, but it'll go to another pot
Oh,
of
okay.
money in the funds.
Gotcha, okay.
Right, because you mentioned forfeitures, because for last year, for 2024, we're showing like $51,000. So, and now it's showing 0.
For which one, Jerry? I'm sorry.
Drug forfeitures.
it's the third
receipts,
page, yeah.
Third page.
Yeah, that is-
It's saying 51,000, now we have nothing for this year and nothing projected. So has
yeah.
something
The
changed?
drug forfeiture.
Stop forfeiting.
Those are actually primarily in other funds and not the general fund. They're restricted funds, so you're audited separately. You have to have separate permission. So
We have them, but there's just somewhere else?
it would be somewhere else in the drug forfeiture fund. Now, I don't know this one. There are certain state funds that have a different restriction, and that might have been a state revenue we had, but all the federal revenues are separately funded.
If you take a look at the monthly packet that I give you, at the tail end, there's a bunch of, call them little crap funds, for lack of a better word, that, like Brian said, you're restricted in what you can use them for.
Sure.
Oftentimes, you'll notice for the police, we're paying an expenditure for a certain item because those funds are restricted in terms of what their use could be. It has to be used for adding something to the police, for instance. So it's been taken out of the general fund and put it in a separate restricted fund, and all those funds are, at the end, you could see, like current year actual, the drug forfeiture expenditure, those are expenditures. We have 58,000 this year.
That's like from traffic stops, right? When we confiscate stuff, we get to sell it.
Right, but we're restricted in what we could use it for, so we really don't put it in the general fund, because otherwise you think you can use it for all these activities, so. But if you look at the back of each monthly packet, you'll see each one of those funds. We have an e-citation fund, there's probably 4 or 5 different funds that have restrictions on them that you can see in there.
Mike, can you just, I'm sorry, mention, it's very important that those funds are be able to use for things that are not budgeted. So that's one of the reasons too, that we don't talk about all those expenses, because there's just a restriction on that fund. So if the police officers needed something to buy, I think recently it was some extra equipment for their drones, some cameras. That was not budgeted, we didn't allocate money for that, so the chief was able to use the federal funds. Things in the budget that you see, he's not allowed to use the federal funds.
I know several years ago, they were looking at doing tasers, which was a first-time thing. Again, we were able to do it for the first time, but once you have it in the budget the first time, and your tasers are 2 years old, 3 years old, and they need to be replaced, you can't use it for it again, because it's already a current budgeted item. It has to be an expansion-type item.
And then another one, Brian, that's coming in pretty low on page 2, the municipal utility tax. I'm showing that it's gonna come in like about 200,000 this year.
Yeah. Those numbers are basically.
Is that gonna be adjusted up, you think, or is that
There
gonna
are
come in?
utility tax on gas and electric, and they have been down. I think the summer was pretty mild for electric, and this winter's been pretty mild, so the gas is way down. I think, Mike knows better than I think the natural gas prices have still been down, so you're not generating those types of bills. So
So
I
that
think
number you
that's, I
think's gonna
think that's
come
a
in?
good number, but if it came in 75 more than that in the audit, I'd be pretty happy.
If you look a couple of years ago to 2024, for instance, where we collected over $1 million, you may not have noticed this. I'm probably one of the only idiots out there that looks at my gas bill every month. If you look at your gas bill every month, it shows you the cents per therm that you're paying. And currently, it's approximately 36 cents per therm. Back a couple of years ago, natural gas went from about $2 to $3 per million cubic feet, the way they measure it and sell it, to $14, and we were paying close to $1 per therm then. So our gas bills went up, consequently, the utility tax that you paid on it went up.
Okay.
Now they've moderated, it's down back to around $3.
So it's
$3.50.
explainable. Okay, all right, thank you.
So that's why you will see that variation, like Brian said.
Okay.
Right, regarding the increase we did to the property taxes that we're discussing abating now, that increase is now, for lack of a better term, permanent, which means next year we won't have to vote to increase it again. It is at that level now. So each year we'd have to make a decision whether to abate it or not. Would that be correct?
Well, yes. Right now, if the council does every levy year what they did this year, you get the information in the police pension fund, whatever number that is, then you would need to approve that levy every year to increase, if you wanted to stay parallel with the pension fund. That's your
Right, but we increased the levy already. And now the discussion today is gonna be about abating it or not.
Correct.
And next year, we won't have to vote again unless we wanted to increase it even another time. The increase is already there.
Well,
Or abating.
you always have to approve a levy, but it could be a levy for the same amount.
Right. So well, I guess my point is, next year's levy would be, if we did the same amount, we'd still have this decision again as to whether we wanted to keep it, which would technically be an increase.
You would probably have it every year now for a
or-
long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
I just
baseline-
wanna make sure we wouldn't have to have the same discussion we had next year, or this year, regarding what we had last year, regarding increasing the baseline.
Well, if I'm understanding, Tom, you will have that every year now. You will have a
Well,
discussion.
but it will be coming in saying,
At the
you've
new
already
amount.
approved this, do you wanna keep it the same? Because that's what we've done all these years.
Keep the
This
levy the
year,
same.
this year we increased it, but we're discussing abating that increase
Correct.
back. Next year, the baseline has changed to what we voted on this year,
Oh,
correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's.
Yeah, the amount this year is about, that was approved in the levy was about 2.9 million.
Right,
So without an abatement, that would be approximately the baseline starting for next year.
that was my question, yes, so we don't have
We've
to have that
we've
same
changed the
conversation
baseline by voting on it
this year.
previously.
Maybe this will clarify it for you a little bit, Tom. This year, it was 2.5 without any increase.
Right.
But since we got the actuarial report, was 2.9.
Right.
So we agreed to go 2.9, realizing that at today's meeting or in the next meeting, we can abate that and bring it back down to the 2.5.
Right.
Which is at your discretion. Next year, or in May or June, when we get the new police actuarial report, instead of being 2.9 number, it's realistically, Brian's got budgeted about 3.4 million. It could come in 3.4, it could come 3.2, but let's say it's the 3.4 million. So this year, if we abate it, we're gonna be down to the 2.5. When we get the actuarial report and it comes in at 3.4, now we'll have that decision to make next July or August. How much are we going to levy for the following year? At which point, we would probably say, well, let's levy the 3.4, so it would be $1 million increase instead of the $500,000 increase it is this year. So next year would be $1 million increase, but at this meeting again next year, we would have the right to abate anything all the way down to that, the 2.5 again. But theoretically, that number is going to be a bigger number that next year.
I mean, I understand why we need to do those things, what we have that's growing over there that we need to worry about. But I guess my question was, if we raised it from 2.5 to 2.9, is 2.9 our new normal as of now? And then or every year do we just go and start from scratch again and pick a number?
Well, that's a policy decision you would have every year.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
You know,
Because if
it-
we
it might-
abate, okay.
You could actually decrease it. If you go to 2.9 this year, you can actually cut it next year to 2.5. People would kiss you for that.
So So if we voted on 2.9, just to, I think there's a little confusion.
I'm
What do we
totally
start
confused.
with, if we abated it back to 2.5, okay? What's the starting number next year? The amount that is charged, 2.5, correct? We don't start at 2.9.
Yes, the base
The
number.
baseline is what is,
2.5
yes.
would be 2.5.
I think that, does that answer your question, John?
Yes.
See, when
I still got a question.
any of the
Okay, that's fine, okay,
entities levy a tax, it goes to the county, and they'll give us, in May, what's called our final extension. And that extension is really the final levy number, which was, this most recent was 2.5.
Right. So whatever we approve, right now it's 2.9. So whatever we decide is going to be the final number levied, that's going to be with what we start with and have to discuss for the following year.
Correct, that would,
Okay.
yes, you would
Whether
do
it's
that.
2.9, 2.5, or somewhere in between.
Yeah, because that would be the number that would determine how big that increase is. And just as a reminder, when we originally talked about the tax levy, the estimate for going up to the 2.9 million was about $65 per household, using the average household of, I forget the numbers, but it was Mike's tax bill I used. So,
450,000 roughly, approximate market value house comes out to about
so I
62.
always like to bring it in real dollar amounts, because we're talking millions and millions, it's a little more intimidating. And it's important for people to understand a dollar value, so that's why we had that number.
Eric's got a question.
So the question I get from residents is, it's a simple one, is it, if we approve tonight's, the budget as it stands right now, is a tax increase required?
Not on the city's portion of their tax.
That's what I mean, that's what I care about.
Correct.
So we would not have to increase taxes.
Well, the budget you have is a plan. This plan shows no
Right.
property tax increase for this,
Okay.
from the city.
Okay, that's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
So right now, as you just said, and just to reiterate, the way the budget is presented tonight does not show that 2.9, you've abated the amount of the increase. And it's reflected in all of our revenue numbers.
Correct. For fiscal year 26.
Yeah, just looking at next year.
Correct.
Yeah, and obviously, as Mike pointed out, we can anticipate since, our motivating factor here is the increasing police pension. So
Yes.
obviously, it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. But right now, the differential that we are very concerned about for this next year appears we're capable of covering it in the current budget as presented.
Yes, and in my review, what I look at, I do look at the 3-year forecast, and I look at revenues, expenses, transferred as fund balance, and I look at the operating reserves. So the operating reserves for all 3 years are at about 4 million, which is what I recommend. And then the amount in the capital projects fund, if you look out at year 3, is about 16 million. And our capital projects, let's just say they're about 4 million a year. So even if you look out to that third year, we've had less in the third year before. I don't remember how much, but that's pretty good, a pretty good reserve for our capital projects. If we had, something serious, a bridge went out or something, we could certainly fund that over time. But in determining a recommendation for the abatement or not, that's what I looked at, the big picture of the general fund and capital project fund.
Now, we talked prior to the meeting about doing a straw poll so that we knew if this is something that, this is something that you're recommending with the mayor, if this is something we need to revisit further, or can we proceed? Because there's obviously a process that the city needs to undertake now to do the abatement, which would likely need to be in either the first or second meeting in March, correct?
Yeah, we have
Because we have to
until-
vote on it, it has to be an ordinance.
Correct. It would be an abatement ordinance. It has to be filed with the county late March. Every year, we have 2 abatements we do for property taxes already in the water fund. We always have done those the first meeting in March, just to make sure we hit the time frame. And in terms, I was interested to see if this was something the council wanted to do. And I don't know if you can make that decision until you go through the whole budget. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, I don't know. But if you've looked through the budget, you understand the numbers, and you think there would be an abatement, it would be nice to know tonight so we could just start working on the ordinance. if we didn't know until the next meeting, we could prepare the ordinance. I've already given the numbers to John to tell him to be ready to write up that ordinance. But it would be helpful to know, or at least get an opinion tonight, maybe.
So when we levied the taxes, we thought we were gonna need the 400,000,
The increase, yes.
the increase. Based on this budget, are we like taking areas that we're not spending that 400,000 or?
I think what makes that tax levy hard is it's in November at the latest, which is really substantially before we're even here talking about things. So it was much safer for the council to pass
just do it.
the full amount with the stipulation, everybody would talk about the possibility of the abatement when we had all the numbers together. So there's a few things, even in this year, as you'll see through the budget, we said carryover. So there are some things that we didn't do this year.
Okay.
Will be carried over to next year. So it's not necessarily that big things changed or we cut big things.
Right, so we
It's
didn't
just-
cut any services that, in order to get to this without raising taxes.
Correct.
Okay.
I think you'll have to be careful of is, we still have a lot of, I'll have all of tonight's meeting and the next meeting to go through.
Right.
And if all you guys decide that we're gonna have free pony rides for every Darien resident this year, it's not in the
ponies.
budget, then you might have to rethink this. But otherwise, I mean, if you're comfortable with the numbers as they are, then you can proceed along the
think we have a
lines
lot to look
that Brian's talking about.
Okay.
And then, Brian, another one too, is on page 3, miscellaneous revenue we had in 2024, 207,000. What was it, it had to be a one-time deal that we don't,
Yeah, the 207,
what was that regards to, do you know?
I would have to check here. I don't remember. That was a.
We had some COVID money still coming in then, didn't we?
And I just don't recall what that was, but I'll check.
Okay.
So just to wrap up in a nice little package, the tax abatement discussion, I'm sensing from Jerry that he wants to wait to revisit it as we proceed through. How does everyone else feel about?
Let's just wait until
Yeah,
we go through
I
it.
would say wait.
Okay. Sounds good. Anything else on those first couple of pages, general fund summary and tax abatement? Okay, because if not, we're gonna then mosey on over to,
I do have one more thing, sorry I'm a little late.
No problem.
Brian, just in terms of, I think we might be overstating a little bit on the cable franchise revenue. We budgeted 420,000, you're projecting 420,000. At the end of January, we're at 264,000. So we're actually about $60,000 under budget through 9 months. So that may come in a little later. It seems like more and more people are going with these streaming services where you're not generating this cable revenue. That's been a declining number for the past probably 4 or 5 years at least.
Sure.
You may want to revisit that. I mean, it's not an earth-shattering number, but
Yeah, those are pretty consistent, the quarterly numbers. They don't fluctuate with each payment we get, so I should have, I should be able to check that pretty easily.
Okay. Anything else, Mike? I don't wanna get too quick. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna put that aside and we're gonna move on to Darien Business Alliance and community events. We've got April Padlick here with us tonight. So if everyone wants to go ahead and grab over. It is
Page 54.
page 54. There were no updates on that. So,
Mary, if I just wanted to add, if in the general fund revenue, there is a line item for special events. I don't have, just lost that page here in my notes, but I think it's about 40,000. You don't show it in the expense side, but there is a revenue that we'll see on the events such as the run of the Darien Fest. Let me see it right here.
are you talking about,
I have 60,000 in revenue. So as you're going through this budget, just keep in mind that there's a revenue that offsets a lot of these expenses.
okay,
it's the last item on the revenue, on the second revenue sheet. Looking
Right.
forward into next year,
Now,
60,000.
now, is that including not giving the money to the chamber? Because I thought when we went through this whole position, it was gonna pretty much be neutral in terms of the revenues would offset the expenses between what we gave to the chamber and fees coming back maybe from Darien Fest? I mean, do we still think that we're gonna get to that point?
Yeah, I think the estimate I gave when the council went through that is accurate. Probably the one difference as you go through the budget, there's a contingency in there of 20,000, and that is going.
But in total,
forward.
it's like $185,000 now, even with, okay, so if you back out the contingency, we're at 165. Okay, so,
You have revenue of 60,000, I'm not sure where the numbers are gonna end up, but you have 60,000 of projected revenue. And on the expense side, you had 35,000 of a chamber grant that we used to give. You won't see that expense in there anymore. So you do have
Right,
that
so that's-
expense going up, so.
right, so let's
where
just
the
say we're
arithmetic
at
comes up,
the,
but you are still gonna be a negative, you're right about that.
not as bad though. Okay, so you're saying 165 less 60, less 35, right? So it leaves $70,000.
Less 8,000 from contract.
Yeah, because I have like what was done at the council meeting.
Yeah, because I was under the impression it was all gonna be,
Management fee, the.
it was pretty much gonna be a wash, if not revenue to the city, correct?
Yeah, it's a wash. The one thing too, we had already been hiring April for management fees for the concerts, about 8,000. That's also into there.
That's gone, okay.
And that's gone now as April's an employee. And I have those numbers, Jerry, because Mike had asked me about that at a previous meeting. And those numbers stand as I presented, except for this contingency that we'll talk through.
Got it. Okay, but you feel comfortable that it's gonna net down like we thought?
Yeah, the one thing we're trying to have is kind of a spring carnival type, which would be a revenue generator. And I am not sure about that at this point. We're trying to get locations and we haven't secured anything yet.
You don't have any revenue for that plugged in there. That 60,000 is basically the Dash and the Darien Fest, I would imagine.
Yeah, Mike, I just have to pull that up here real quick and I can get you that number exactly.
Now, one of the things in here is the concerts at 20,650. Now, I remember at our goal setting, when Ray Jablonski was there, I thought he made a comment that he thought that the Park District would like to take over the concerts. Is that something they'd still want to consider?
I met with Mr. Jablonski for lunch late in November, early December. And Mr. Jablonski said if the city intended to run the concerts, the Park District would not run the concerts. You have to understand that the way they run the concerts is they have a band in the pavilion and they get about 100 people. We put a band on a stage and we get about 500 to 600 people. So we're looking, and Mr. Jablonski understands that there's a significant difference between the two. And when I mentioned that we would like to do the concerts or continue to do the concerts, Mr. Jablonski said then we will not do the concerts at the park. The only thing Ray has agreed to at that meeting was that he would look at Westwood Park, they would look at Westwood Park and the possibility of changing where the pickleball courts are.
Are proposed to be, because they're not there yet.
They're supposed to be, correct. And he agreed for the council, this council, to meet with his commissioners to discuss common goals and shared objectives. That meeting would take place when he comes back from vacation. Those are the two things that he agreed to.
One question I have on there, though, we have the concerts that you're talking about, Jerry, of 20,650, but we also have a concert contingency of $10,000. That's almost 50% of the total cost in a contingency. What's a potential contingency that large?
What are those for?
I think that's just a carryover from when we first started the concert series. Is that correct, Brian?
I have to pull up that budget sheet, Mike, just give me a minute, I'm sorry.
Okay, so right now we're on DBA and community events, page 54. And then page 55 and 56 have
The breakdown.
the breakdown.
Right, just a question of contingencies.
Yeah.
So we've got a question on the $10,000 contingency and the $20,000 contingency.
Well, the 10 contingency for the
10.
special events, that's just something we've been doing now for a couple of years.
Since the inception.
There might be time you need a tent, there might be time that you need extra washrooms or things that we just have not contemplated. So hopefully by the end of the year, that.
Or an industrial strength generator.
Industrial strength
Because we've
generator,
come into
depending on
problems
where we
with
have it.
generators.
So,
But we looked at we looked at the concerts and we knew exactly what they came in at last year, right? I think at one point I asked for that. Was it
Yes.
like,
What is that on here?
was it like, at least like 8,000 per or something? Is that sound about right?
Well, also because I was a contract role at the time.
True.
Again, the difference this year would be hopefully the sponsorships, if we get sponsorships there, that should be some additional.
Which we didn't
And
see.
I'm not sure because of the new agreement with the park district, if our typical sponsors will probably not be able to sponsor the event.
So you're gonna get back on the contingency or?
Yeah, I like that.
Well, no, I think
With that, Eric, or-
the contingency is exactly that, it's for unforeseen expenses.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't tell you what that would be. I think April gave an example. This past year, we tried to start the concert, the generators failed, they didn't work. If we move to ever getting a tent, there's another expense. I don't know if the stage expenses are going up. But it is just for unforeseen expenses that come up during the concerts.
And that's the one under public relations, the 10,000.
Correct. Also, we have.
Let's take a moment to look at everything on page 55 that goes above that. Is there any questions on any of the items, salaries, overtime, the benefits, the operating that occurs on page 55 up to concerts contingency before we go to the next page? Any questions for April and Brian about those items?
What is Chamber Master?
It's our computer system. It's interactive with our membership, all the businesses. It can invoice, it can take credit card payments.
So it's the computer that we used when it was the Chamber, now it's just being transferred?
Yes.
But it didn't,
And we do have it at a discounted, a lower rate than what the chamber was paying.
Okay.
Total.
and that's an annual fee, correct, April?
That's actually cheaper if we would have inherited the chamber master.
Or try to initiate your own
So that's really
system.
not discretionary, it's really, you can't do your job without it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's critical, yeah.
Jerry, last year, the concerts, about 28,000.
For all of them.
Yes.
For those,
And
I
it
think there was just,
And it included, yes.
But it included
Fall Fest
April's.
and April's
if I may, did
8,000.
it also include Oktoberfest or was that just the 3 concerts?
Included all.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions on page 55 items? Okay, so then we're gonna move on to page 56, which I think the question would be on the contingency of $20,000 and an explanation of that.
Yeah, when we had met with a group of business owners, we talked about, a number of things that, that our new group could carry forward. We talked about, there might be a time when we would have a guest speaker. There might be time that we would, like we're talking about now, having a kickoff annual event that the city sponsors. There's some things like that, and again, because we're new at this, we have not planned out what all those events or things along those lines might be. We've talked about a few, but, should the council approve this, the intent for April and I are to come back with more specific list of things that
April,
we
where
could
is
plan on
the-
and we would wanna do.
Where is the business magazine that we talked about today?
It's upstairs.
That's a revenue producer for us, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not a cost to us.
It's not a cost to us. We do a community guide, which many of you probably received last year in about January. It lists all Darien businesses, well, it will list all Darien businesses, both alphabetically and by category. That is included in their membership, it doesn't cost them anything. And then they can also have a chance, if they choose, to purchase additional advertising, coupons, full-page ads, things of that sort. Last year, I believe we got about $1,800 for that. This year, I'm anticipating a little more because we have a bigger base to deal with and sales have been going pretty well. We get about 15% of that revenue back to us.
There was some other, again, just brainstorming ideas. The group talked about having a local Darien Shark Tank and just different events. There's not one event that will cost $20,000. So it's smaller events that we might want to plan throughout the year.
So Brian, regarding that, in the event you had come up with an idea for a new event, will that come before city council or will that just be done? And that's why I guess, I don't know if I'm concerned about 20,000, but it's kind of a blank check at this point, you know, and I have no problem with it, with the understanding we're gonna be kept abreast of what it's gonna be used for.
Yeah, you know, and as I mentioned, I talked to April today, I said if the council's fine with that, we would come back with a list, a better list of things. Now, we'd give the council list, and if something's $1,000, you know, under the 5, I could go ahead and approve that. But if there were anything in that contingency over 5, we would definitely come back to the council. But in any event, whenever we have a list that we think, you know, is either final or tentative ideas, we would come back first to admin finance. That will be kind of the monitoring of this department for now, and then we'd send that info out to the council.
Yeah, it sounds like it's obviously in development, it's so new. But yeah, I think hopefully over, you know, the near future, I mean, not next week necessarily, but like the evolution of this advisory group and the brainstorming and the planning, because obviously there'll be organization and time to set out things for it. That, yeah, like the concept and the plan could be shared with us so that we have an idea of how that money is being spent. But I think it's great that that group is getting together and, I mean, coming up with some very creative ideas.
And not all of those will necessarily, again, be at our expense. So there
Some of the
might be,
businesses
there
might be.
might be a luncheon we have that the members who are attending pay. We did talk about the one is kind of a kickoff or a hook to get people interested. Now, whether that would continue annually, I guess it depends on our discussion with the council.
And often all these opportunities, all these events offer sponsorship opportunities as well, so.
That's really also a good point, April, and that's an unknown. In revenue, I contemplated really only about $4,000 or so, $4,000 to $7,000 in sponsorships. I mean, it could be more than that.
Are you talking about?
I'm just talking about in general, all the sponsorships.
I've got rough numbers that I could tell you. Last year, the Darien Chamber, starting with Darien Dash, for 2 years running, each year, 24 and 23, the Darien Dash brought in over $10,000. Summer concert series, we were allowed to sell sponsorships at roughly in the ballpark of about 5,000, but because it was new, we weren't really pushing that a lot. And Darien Fest, roughly in the ballpark of 80,000, but that included liquor sales and the fact that we were over at Westwood Park, which was highly visible with a really great weekend. Keep in mind, we're at the whim of weather, but so far, we haven't had any issues.
Was that 80 a net?
That was net.
That was your net, okay. And as an example, as I put my numbers in, I looked at Darien Fest, I put 40,000. I don't know
And
what.
it changes, every year changes, it, you know, and again, whim of the weather, and then in our case here in Darien, location.
And then now also the added factor that the park district might restrict.
We don't, we're actually listed as not making any revenue on Oktoberfest. We're paying for a stage and the bands and a couple of things for that, but we're not making any revenue on that. That's to be, I want you to understand that there's no revenue coming into us, whereas Darien Fest is a lot of revenue.
Sponsorship, it's a business expo, it's carnival. The carnival's the main one that brings in the.
Joe, you might want to mention the Lions Club, obviously, partnering with them for that event, I think that's always a good thing to mention, because they do a heck of a lot of work for that.
Lions Club spends significant dollars on Oktoberfest. Your chairman's sitting right over there.
Oh, congratulations, Tom.
And I'll be honest with you, the question I ask is Oktoberfest even worth it, the effort?
Oh, I believe Oktoberfest is more than worth it.
I think it's been very well attended, hasn't it?
No.
We probably,
It's been very well attended.
No, it hasn't.
we had about 1,200 people.
Not
the
compared
first
to
year.
like Lamont and stuff. I mean, Lamont is packed, full of people, and I come to Darien and there's 1/10 of the people.
You guys make a profit off of it?
Oh, yeah.
Especially
And-
for a
and
first-time event.
There's, I think we estimated 1,200 the first event. It's brand new. It's the second year.
Right.
Yeah, we don't get 15 or 20,000 people, but Westwood Park couldn't fit 15 or 20,000
Right.
people either. It fills the park.
And it's a
I mean, I was at
partnership.
that, I was there this past one. I missed the first one at Carrots Greens, but I went to one here and
Too.
I thought it was a blast.
I've gotten very positive feedback from the community
like
members.
Ted said, as long as it's generating some money,
And Lions Club is doing most of the heavy lifting.
Can I say something? At Oktoberfest, it's a new event. It's only gonna grow. Once word gets out,
I mean, I like it way better than the concert series personally, but that's just my opinion, but
Any other questions for April on this budget?
You may like July's concert. We're doing Ocean's Rat Pack, so it'll be Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, and
That's different, because there's been nothing,
Yeah.
You got the Rapid Sammy Davis Jr.
Sammy Davis Jr. Thank you. And
Sinatra.
you're the MC.
do they look like them?
I'm sorry.
Do they look like them?
They sound like them.
I'd like to mention one thing, because April doesn't mention this, but when April goes out and negotiates,
I'm a negotiator.
she gets fabulous prices from these bands.
Example is the Rat Pack. They tour on a professional level, and they wanted way over 3,000, and I got them down.
You are a master. I'm gonna take you if I have to buy a car.
It's brutal.
I was shocked having, a musical person in my family, when, this was a couple of years ago, and I was like, because some of these groups also have groupies
Yeah,
that travel
they do,
with them.
they do.
And I was like, who are those people? So, when you told me how much, I was just, for the caliber of, entertainment, it was shocking to me how, what a great price you negotiated.
Well, they know in the beginning. I book early, and they know when you say a city is, sponsoring, right away they'll give you a number, and I just like, oh, slow down. I go, that's way out of budget. I can't do that. And then we start.
We're lucky to have you on our team, April.
I act like it's my house.
I'll just use.
Any other questions, Brian, April? Anything else you want to highlight from the DBA and community events budgets?
No, again, only to reiterate, any activities or this department will come back, to the Admin Finance Committee for, approvals of different things, which we've already started doing that. Be that committee.
Okay. Great. That's all said, then we'll put that one to rest. Thank you, April, for being with us. Let's take like a few-minute recess if anyone wants to go to the bathroom and get a snack before we roll into Dan.
Are we going to community development?
Yes, we are going to Community Development, Streets and Capital with Dan. Okay? We will reconvene at 7:05. Thanks, April.
Thank you.
Okay,
It's fabulous.
let's giddy up. We are gonna start with Dan Gombeck and the Community Development Department budget. This is page 61. Everyone's got that on their computers or hard copies in front of them with the corresponding pages. So, Dan, I'm gonna turn it over to you for anything you might wanna overview.
Just in general, what we did this year is, obviously, there's a lot of dues and subscriptions out there, and over the years, they've been kind of a little bit all over the place. So what we did this time is, especially with all the new technology, such as Laserfish, scanning, some of our software, working software, OpenGov, we've coordinated efforts to make sure they're in the representative departments and/or split between several different departments. For example, OpenGov may be partially within the community development, within the municipal services, as well as in the water. So again, I think we did a very fine job from that perspective. We still have a little more technology to go, which you'll see in the upcoming budget, and that's basically on the Laserfish. One thing we're gonna be working at, the OpenGov software, we're gonna be working with new platforms for building and permitting software. And that, in a nutshell, and I'll explain it right now, is basically where vendors will have the opportunity, homeowners and/or contractors will have the opportunity to basically apply online. From that portion on, the reports or the reviews will be transmitted electronically to various departments, again, streamlining, cutting out the paper, and making it's obviously more efficient than with the paper trail, so on and so forth. So that's just one minor example. But as we get into it, I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions for the committee here.
So we're gonna start out, we've got the, obviously the overview page, but we're gonna start with 62, page 62, the breakdown. Any questions under salaries and benefits? Okay, moving on to operating. Mike?
Just one thing, the ESRI GIS, it says 1/3 street, 1/3 water. That should be half and half, I'm assuming, Dan. It's not, or are we breaking it out 3 ways? Because I've seen that 1/3 in a few other places.
That's one of the items I was just covering. Some of those items will be covered over 1/3 because they obviously hit other departments.
Is 1/3, not a half, okay? I know
Correct.
what
Some it's a half, some are thirds.
I should pay attention. My fault. Sorry.
So a third of it's in community, a third of it's in street, a third of it's in water.
That is correct.
Any other questions under operating? Dues and subscriptions, liability? I know we talked a little bit the other night at city council that we don't have a lot of activity quite yet on paid advertisement on our digital sign.
Correct. Did not want to put our revenue in there. We're not even in the first quarter yet.
Any more questions on page 62? Yes.
But Dan, on the dues and subscriptions, again, what was it particularly?
I'm sorry, what was it?
Yeah, because we were at 500, now we're going up to 74,000.
Correct, and some of it is the brand new licensing that we have, it's a reoccurring expense that was covered within the previous agendas when we had actually activated the software and approved the software. And again, some of them were just scattered through other accounts, whereas now it's all under one umbrella, if you want to say. So for example, APA membership may have been on another account aside from dues and subscriptions, as well as some of the other ones. The marquee sign, this is the first year that we actually have that expense on a reoccurring expense. What else is on there? Some of the Laserfish licensing, that's the brand new expense now for the maintenance and the licensing.
Okay.
Dan, maybe just real quick, it is pretty interesting because we've gone through so much technology. Maybe just give a quick overview of each of those, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Okay, on the OpenGov business licensing, We probably initiated that almost 2 years ago now. On the licensing portion now, it's basically an online application for home businesses as well as any retail business in the city of Darien. Whereas prior to, it would be basically, we mail them out, hopefully they come back. Now it's all electronically, they can pay online. So I'm gonna give just quick overviews on this. So that's one example. Also, in that particular case, we have found that there were certain situations where they weren't being charged accordingly, if you want to say. So some of the revenue has been increased in there as well now because of all the categories that are in there. The next one is the building code enforcement. This is one that really is a great program right now. It gives residents the opportunity to go online and basically file a complaint through this software. It goes, in this case, it goes right to Ryan or the planner. The planner then initiates it back to Karen Byrne through this work order system. So we have a continuous tracking system, whereas if you recall prior to, it used to be all hands entries through a Excel spreadsheet. You know, everything would have to be followed up almost on a monthly basis. And that became cumbersome with court dates, continuances, fines, so on and so forth. And it gives everyone an opportunity to go back and see what the status of that, and it's an ongoing record for that property in case there's habitual or just circumstances that somebody wants to FOIA, for example. The next one.
Can a person still call if a person doesn't have online access, can they still call up?
Oh, sure. You know, and it's one of the things we all, I think, in the last probably 2 years, we're more cognizant to is that there's still residents out there that.
I've got quite a few.
That will never, you know, again, go on a computer for whatever reason.
Never owned a computer.
Exactly, and they're gonna pick up the phone and basically call. So we're cognizant of that, including some business licenses where, you know, home businesses, for example. Hard to believe, but yes, we've taken that into account and realized all that.
These business licenses, Dan, I know that's something new now, and we have typically been we get a fee for business licenses, typically runs 35 to 40,000, but now we've got another $13,000 expense. Have we done any kind of an analysis, saying, for example, are we charging a $200 business license fee, and what's Downers Grove charging? Are we competitive in that? Because now we've got an extra cost versus pretty much what's the same revenue going forward.
I'll be honest with you, we're probably not competitive. We're probably one of the lowest around. Our goal right now was to basically get a system that's up and running, implementing it, and seeing what we currently have, you know, how many businesses, so on and so forth, a true accuracy of counting of businesses. And then, you know, we could always initiate that. So those are things as far as call them revenue generators, whether it's the business licenses and or the building permits. Our building permits are probably the one lowest around as well. Again, the city council has pride themselves on that, but that's something that's, you know, we could always look at as well.
Yeah, I mean, we should always look at the revenue side of it, especially how we are competitive with others, especially, again, you got an extra cost coming in here. So actually, we're losing money by doing this. I mean, I agree with the concept. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. But if we're losing money on it, then.
No, really, I wouldn't say we're losing money because we're taking that person who spent so much time on it and now they're doing something else that's more efficient.
We haven't deleted any people upstairs. And I'm not.
Unfortunately, yeah, we're short-staffed currently, so again, we're waiting to find that out. You're exactly right, Mike, and it's no different than the beet juice that we use versus salt. So it's along those same categories, but that's for a later discussion anyway.
And then Dan, on consulting, was that professional reimbursement? So last year we're at 81,570. This year we're estimating 68,000. And then in the budget, we're going up to 103. So what's changed that we came down this year, but now we see there's a need to go back up?
I'm sorry, can you give me a line item, please, that you were looking at?
Consulting, on page 61.
On the next page.
Oh, your next page, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
So you're at 4325.
Did you say the 28, Jerry, the reimbursable?
23, yeah,
I
40,
thought I heard
Yeah.
Jerry said reimbursable.
yeah, it is.
Oh,
Yeah, Brian, we were at 81,570. we're projecting this year 68,000. So we're actually coming down from last year, but now we're requesting 103.
Again, the reasoning for that is we've put more items into that category now, whereas prior to, they were in several different places. So now we have a detailed list of reimbursements, and Treasurer Corn, matter of fact, brought that up last year on the reimbursements and what we're paying out, so, I think it is more clear. I vetted everything with Julie. There's codes to the accounts. So I think it's a streamlining process, and that's why it's basically up. It's the same. You'll see reductions somewhere else. I can't give you the reductions of the other ones, but I can assure you that they've been evened out.
To push somewhere? Okay.
Yes.
Any more questions on page 62 before we flip over? Okay, so now we're on page 63. I know we jumped down to consulting professional reimbursement, but it's
I'm sorry, did I finish answering everything on the previous page?
on the licensing and the dues and subscriptions?
Yes, is there any, okay.
Does anyone have any more questions going back? It's okay, going back to page 62, dues and subscriptions. Dan was explaining some of the dues and subscriptions and the reasoning behind them. Are there any more questions on account 20-4213? Anything else you want to highlight, Dan?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, so we're going to flip to page 63. We'll start at the top. Any questions on, I think, is everyone up to speed on the economic development, the Walmart and the Home Depot tax rebate? I believe so.
When does that end now, the Walmart one?
Never.
Never, but I mean, when can they come back at us and want to renegotiate it?
Never.
Never.
They can't come back and say, we want to up that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Page 61.
No, serious.
No, they have.
thought I was late.
Agreement, as long as they're operating, the agreement's in place.
Okay.
Until we pay
So
off.
it doesn't it doesn't end at a certain day, year.
No, we have a number obligation to them, but it's compounding at 8%. So we're really never gonna get to that number during your lifetime or my lifetime, essentially what it amounts to.
Oh,
If
okay.
we were
I
able to get
understand.
to that number, then yes, it would end once we've reimbursed them their extra expenses when they did the remodel and the expansion. Now, the Home Depot, on the other hand, does have a 10-year term. I believe it's got, 2 years?
This is I have that this is the last payment.
That was the question I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
and Home Depot should be coming back, I believe they'll be coming back, I heard some rumors on that, so we'll have to deal with that as that comes along. And again, just backing up to Walmart, I think that needs to be prefaced by, if this incentive wasn't in place, there would be no Walmart at that location.
That's what they say.
Which
That's what we
generates,
know.
which
And we
generates,
know that.
I think they do that every location though.
They do it in every location in the state of Illinois,
Yeah.
and if they don't get a deal, they pull out. It's pretty much what happened, from what I understand, with Sam's Club in Woodridge. So,
difference with Home Depot, though, they own the real estate.
correct.
So it ties them, well, should tie them a little bit better to the area.
Home Depot does not own the site here.
No, Home Depot, I'm sorry, Walmart, I'm sorry.
Walmart, okay.
yes. I'm sorry, I spoke, yeah, it's Walmart.
So,
If Walmart closes, Walmart, that store goes black for 5
Oh,
years.
yeah. No, we don't want that.
No, we don't want that.
No.
You good with economic development?
Yeah.
Now that sounds very doom and gloom, to be honest with you.
The
I
last
think
thing-
I'm gonna keep going to my Walmart, my Home
Jared?
Depot.
One
I
last
go to
thing.
Walmart
Yes,
about
yes.
every day.
This
I walk over
account is
there
where the
every day.
35,000 to the chamber was last year, Jerry. So if you look at last year's expenses, it was 35,000 higher allocating for the chamber reimbursement, so it's out of here.
Thanks, Mike, for pointing that out. Okay. Moseying on down, anything else? And we'll go right into contractual services so that Dan can talk a little bit. There's supporting documents on page 64, 65, and 66 regarding the Laserfiche scanning and for planning and zoning and the files. Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Again, this is an ongoing program with scanning. This is in its third year now. What we have left for the community development department, if you were to go back into this back room over here, you'll notice that we have planning and zoning files. Those planning and zoning files basically tell the history of every piece of property, subdivision, and it's a history book is what it is. They need to be preserved. If you start looking through some of those files, you basically can start seeing some of the paper is starting to disintegrate. We don't have climate-controlled rooms per se. In addition to that, this is part of the building permits. You probably noticed all the cabinets that are in the actual hallway, some of the space that we've opened up now. All those files, those are building permit files. All those building permit files were within those cabinets, and believe me, they were packed. So with this said now, is that we've taken all this information, and we'll be giving it to a scanning company to go and basically scan all this stuff. And this is only for the planning and zoning files. The building permits are currently being scanned right now. There's a lot of paper there. It's been estimated there's about 120,000 various records, papers, full size. There's some of them are full size. That's something that Jessica has been a great asset to, and just going through Jessica and Angela, our part-timers who have become very well trained at going through these files, cataloging them, indexing, so that any department has the opportunity to go in there and take a look at this without going downstairs and looking for a file for whatever the case is, an hour, and trying to, that property pops up on there on the system, and you can find every piece of document that you're looking for.
So Dan, once that's done and you're caught up, what's the process then going forward?
The process will be more than likely, we're gonna basically go for destruction. We have to apply back to the state to let the state know, but they do accept this laserfish concept, if you wanna say. We currently have the record, excuse me, not the records, the clerk's office. Now, if anybody's been in the clerk's office, we have, things in there from 1980 that's sitting on counters. So that needs to all be purged. There's duplications of agenda memos, things that were in our department. So the clerk's office has a lot of work to do. So we're trying to coordinate that with the city clerk at this point, but that's for next year.
No, it's okay, so no, I think once that's caught up and you've got all those paperwork's converted over, then as you're doing new stuff that's coming through the door now, is that in a separate system?
No, it's all be in the same system, it'll be scanned. So let's say, for example, that you're coming in, your subdivision, or let's say you've had permits in the past.
So everything now that's happening now is going into the new system?
Correct.
That's catching up all the prior?
Correct.
Okay.
So that one address will have building permits, planning and zoning potentially, variations, special uses, so on and so
I
forth.
just want to make sure it wasn't a separate system.
No.
It's the same system?
No, same
Okay.
system, yes.
Is there anything else left to be scanned after we're done with this?
Besides the clerk's office and
Well, but that's on this budget too, right?
I believe it is, yes. I was gonna hit the next thing.
After
on there.
those two things,
Right.
we caught up?
Yes.
And then it's just gonna be paying for the system, not for,
The licensing and the storage, the cloud storage, correct.
Dan, you've purchased, I don't recall, a few scanners we did already.
Yes.
So we have those in place for staff.
Yes, the equipment is all in place. So it's a good base at this point.
Is the storage budgeted in here anywhere at this point?
Storage
Well,
for,
I assume
Yes.
those is going to the cloud somewhere. and we have-
yes, that was back to your question earlier on the 4213 with the subscriptions under Laserfish.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions on contractual services and the new items, the discretionary? Moving on to consulting professional reimbursement. I know,
Sorry, yeah.
anything more you?
No.
Okay, so Jerry asked that question earlier. Any other questions on it now?
It's on the wrong page.
Okay, so, anything else from you, Dan, or can we wrap up community development?
Let me check one thing, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have it in front of me. We had that advertising for community development, you did pull that, if I'm not mistaken. Do we want to bring that up and address that at all, or no? At this point?
There's certain things we'll go through. You know, I was gonna ask about cutting before Nothing material, but this was something Dan had put in. Go ahead, Dan.
So one of the items that I had put in, and I'm in the process of looking for it right now, Brian did remove it, obviously being conscientious of, some of the cuts and so on and so forth, was advertising for, businesses. Okay, and when I say advertising for businesses, this would have been actual spots on national TV. For example, a company would come in here, a professional media company would come in here and basically show a family at patio, for example, having dinner. So that may be the spotlight for the 1 month. And the following month, we may have Brewster's or whatever other restaurant and or service that we may, or the city council may want to help promote the city of Darien from a economic development standpoint. And I do believe that was 80,000. Unfortunately, I don't have it right in front of me here right now.
It was 80 times 3. Each year you fly it in. So
Yeah, but 80,000 per year. So again, if there's some consideration for that, I wanted to bring that up. If there's not, then I know it's been spoken of in the past with businesses and supporting businesses, so on and so forth. So if there's any consideration for it, I can provide the backup to that if the committee would like.
I don't know if it's a bad idea, but I don't know if I'm ready for it at this moment. I'd like to see how the business development stuff works and maybe take a look at it next year.
Understood, we'll earmark it then for next year potentially.
So Dan, we'll talk about it again next year. Thanks.
Brian 1, Dan 0.
Dan, me and you are on the
That's a
same
great-
team.
I think it's a great, don't lose hope, keep hope alive. That's a good point, Tom, about seeing how our New
Right.
Business Alliance evolves and how they can maybe help with this.
Yeah, maybe blend it all together, and again, it was just when everything was in the infancy of this, but I
Okay.
just didn't want to bring that up.
You were censored by Brian, so thanks for reminding us. Not the first time, right?
You were so kind in those words.
Okay, so we are departing community development and moving into the very thick streets department. Streets. That would be page 75. Okay? So we're looking at the overview page before we go down into the summary pages. Anything you want to point out on the overview page, Dan?
I don't, but I'm open to any questions, if there are any questions.
If not, we can start going through the breakdown on page 76.
No, let's
Oh, no, Mike, go ahead.
back up, sorry.
It's okay.
Let's see, a couple things. Maintenance vehicles projected at 110,000 for the year. We're at 46,000 through January, anticipating more in that.
The biggest answer is yes, it's a simple answer. If you want an explanation, I'd be more than happy to answer that.
The utilities, gas and electric, budgeted at 26, projected to come in at 25, yet the next 3 years going all the way down to 7,200.
Have to check that, Mike.
Yeah, that's something.
Maintenance on the building was 304 estimated, and we're only at $180 on that?
Correct, and there's some carryover on that. Basically, the carryover is on the generators.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Brian, you note that one for the utilities?
I'm sorry.
Utilities, you noted?
No, we'll have to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you noted it?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And then under equipment, under capital, estimated 1.5 million or 1.56 million, and we're only gonna be at 905?
Capital?
Capital, yeah, under equipment. I'm wondering, is that trucks or?
Trying to find that line item, to be honest with you.
Yeah, front page, all the way, second from the
Page
bottom.
75 at the
Towards the
bottom.
bottom, right before,
Oh, okay, capital, then
Yeah.
equipment over there, okay, 117,905.
373.
Yeah, and is a good number. Keep in mind that we bought a lot of vehicles while we had the opportunities. and/or other equipment. Some of those pieces of equipment were either trucks and/or mowers, for example.
I've got a couple more here, Dan. Consulting professional services, estimated actual 10,000. We're already over 48,000 as of the end of January. And as a potential offset, a couple lines down, residential concrete projected at 38,900, almost 39,000, and we're only at 7,000, a little under $8,000 through January. It looks like one is short and one is over.
And I apologize, Mike, I'm trying to follow you here. You're still on
Sorry.
page 75.
Yeah.
Consulting
Contractual
services.
services.
Yeah, 42,
Okay.
account 4325, at the end of January, it's over 48,000, and you're projecting 10,000 on the sheet here.
Residential concrete, I know that was one of them.
Or consulting.
Consulting.
So right now, you're
Professional
under
services.
contractual
Okay.
services, consulting and professional services.
Account 4325 if you're looking at the account.
I'd have to take a look at that because I'm looking at the front sheet over there. It's not really telling me anything.
Okay, well, why don't we, okay, so we'll go into the breakdowns with the account numbers and maybe that'll, is there anything else you want us to hone in on, Mike?
Not on that cover sheet.
Okay. So things that were pointed out on the cover sheet, we're gonna look into now on the corresponding pages. So we're on page 76. We're looking at salaries, benefits, and operating.
Yeah, is this part-time administrator in Public Works 30,000? That's new in terms of a line item budget.
Account 30-4010, page 76, the very top.
PT admin and PW 30,000, that's something new this year, unless.
Yeah, I think you had that in scanning.
Right, that was for scanning, combination of the scanning between Jessica and Angela, and whoever else we may need throughout the year. Again, these are just
So that's for the
seasonal
coming year.
employees, basically, correct.
Whereas last
I'm
year.
sorry, the last part I didn't hear, but that, when Dan presented this year for the scanning, there was enough in that scanning to account for this. We've
Okay.
gone through that for a year and we broke it out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 76? Got a couple items under operating 30-4219 under,
Yeah, there, I guess, on the discretionary part, we've got the 2,000 air mask testing and hepatitis shots, 2,000 and 2,000 this year. Last year was 190 and 347.
Correct. What we're waiting for right now is we currently have a consultant that's going through all of our IRMA policies. While we're going through some of these IRMA policies, there's certain things that may be required, such as if one of the guys needs to enter a storm sewer manhole underground. Well, obviously, there could be contaminants in there, so we want to make sure that, whether it's a type of hepatitis shot, for example. So that's something that the consultant was going to be recommending. We want to make sure we had some money's budgeted, so the telltale is going to be within the next two and a half months.
It's small, I just noticed the
Yes,
difference.
that is
So I must
correct.
assume there was a logic behind it.
any other questions on page 76 items? Okay, we're gonna move to page 77. We've got maintenance building. Obviously, we've got, further down in maintenance building, we've got some discretionary items that include roof replacement for both City Hall and the police station, along with generators, some carryovers.
Can you talk more about the whole generator issue?
Sure. Currently, we have a generator here at City Hall. We have a generator over at the police department. Just on the side, we also have a generator over at our plant too, which if you recall earlier this year, you had approved a engineering budget for that. But regardless, that's where we have basically the generators, and they're for police department, obviously for 24-hour operations. For the city hall, we have it for, besides a cooling center, for example, or a heating center, number two, in case of any type of emergencies. Those emergencies may be such things as tornadoes, power outages, things that are gonna last, a while, if you wanna say, and we need staff here to man the phones, man the computers, lighting. So that's what the generator over here would be utilized for.
It's natural gas, it's no longer diesel.
They're gonna be natural gas, and we don't have the actual total costs yet. We're putting the bid specs together as we're, basically in transition here. So we're gonna be looking at what are we powering up, what are we not powering up. Obviously, the city hall is probably the least expensive of the other generators, because there's not a lot in here. It's just basically lights, and if, for example, lights in the city council, we may need the mayor to sign a proclamation of emergency disaster of some sort, to where the city council would be required, to be in session, pretty much.
So what's wrong with the current generators? Why do we have to replace them?
Parts, they're getting outdated, they're diesel. It's getting to a point where the maintenance is starting to get up there, if you want to say. And just the diesel aspect of it, it's time,
How old are the old ones?
Yeah,
since day number one. So in other words, the building here is 38, anywhere from 25 to 35 years old.
And the roofs, are these the original roofs? Or did we,
I'm not, this one roof over here is probably a combination of an addition, and there may be some original on it. To what extent, there's no records that really define what it is.
I don't remember.
This roof was completed in 1997 when we did the redesign.
Yeah, because Joe, I don't remember us ever doing the roofs at all.
You could look, it's funny you mention it, because when we were in the police training room today, they had a picture of the site. And you look at the picture of City Hall, which was then had an addition, the police station on it, and it's a flat roof.
Okay.
So the current roof was built over an older roof.
Right, then there's part that we have a metal facade on there, so the combination of the two, they're old. They're aged.
But once we put the new roofs in, they'll last at least 10 years, right?
Oh, easily,
Okay.
easily.
And then on the salt shed analysis, it says half here and then half to water, so it's $1.50. Is that $1.50 going to make sure it's gonna be completely strengthened, or are we just analyzing how bad it is?
Part of it is based on analysis, and unfortunately, what it is, just so the rest of the city council understands, obviously, it was about 12, 14 years ago, we had built a salt shed that would basically account for our full year's allotment of approximately 3,000 tons. What we've noticed over the last, call a couple years, is that the walls, these are, I think, about 17-foot tall walls, concrete panels, if you want to say. We're noticing that they're starting to have some cracking in them, and some slight bowing. Now, we've had engineers out there, we've had the manufacturers out there, we've had the structural engineers out there. No one is raising a red alarm. While they're now raising an alarm, they're putting up a caution flag. So what we've done now is, we've recently found what their crack sensors, if you want to say. So we just purchased, I think, like 12 crack sensors that we're going to put on the building. I believe it was like $1,000, and we're going to put those on there to be able to determine on a monthly basis how much their movement there is, and then take those findings, report them back to a structural engineer, probably Chris Burke in this case. And what the issue is that when the machines, obviously we're not using shovels, we're using larger machines that go and grab the salt and basically load the trucks up. Well, the same operation is when salt gets delivered, we're pushing it back in there. As we're pushing it back in there, it's referred to as the momentum that's coming up against these walls and basically pushing these walls back and forth. Now, we're not concerned that it's, a failure that's gonna happen tomorrow, and the engineers can't even answer that for us. We're all being cautious in the departments. The only time there's a person in there is basically when they're in the machine. The machine is obviously does have a roll bar, so on and so forth. So again, we feel good about it, but again, we want to make sure we take all the precautionary looks at everything.
Yeah, I mean, in this situation, well, you know, the old saying with me is, are we chasing good money after bad? And I think this one's still good money after good, because we got such a super deal on it when we originally built that at 220, you know?
Yeah, exactly, you know, while we did that, if we were to basically say, okay, contractor, design and build, we're looking at close to probably 800,000 today. So it's, you know, it served us well.
Oh, God, that was, when John showed up yesterday, in Glon, I was just thinking about that.
I think we call that the Podoroski salt shed.
What year again was that built?
I believe it was 12 or 14 years ago.
Yeah, it was when Galan was still on city council,
So
so.
it was, because he was from 11, you know, I think it was 10 or 11.
Because Ted and I and John were on municipal services.
Right.
And we weren't gonna be able to get, the original cost was high, we decided to have Dan subcontract it.
Right, so what happened was the original one Dan brought forward was like the dome ones that you see like on IDOT, and there was 150,000, and Dan said, well, it may last 10 to 15 years. I'm like, well, why the hell are we gonna do that if it's not gonna last that short? So we went with the other one. But it's paid for itself how many times over, especially with the winter of 14, when we were selling, I think we were selling salt to Argonne, they were needing it. Everybody was needing salt, because we were the only ones that could store it, basically.
Because we had additional space to storage, we got a better price on our salt.
Correct.
Yeah, because we were able to buy more salt.
Yeah, there's called pre-sales when you take loads, certain loads prior to.
Last thing on that, wasn't the salt that year, didn't it go up to like 150?
There was a couple years where we paid astronomical prices, $140 a ton.
140 at one point
Yeah.
versus now, which is what, 75?
60s, about 75, 76.
Because you couldn't get it, nobody had it, you know, so.
Now we got plenty. All we have to do is shovel the front.
There you go.
Any more questions on the maintenance building budget, 30-4223?
And just, do you know why the generators have gone up so much in price
Yes.
from the year before?
Yeah.
Part of the problem is that when we looked at them, we called a couple people and said, hey, a couple generator companies, said, those generator companies said, yeah, it's about this price. Without any type of real look to see what the transfer switches that we currently have, whether it's here and or the police department or at the pump station. Combination of all that meant different electronics, different transfer switches, so on and so forth. And
So what's in apples and apples, it's apples and oranges.
Correct.
What we approved last year was based on an assumption we would need X and we ended up needing something
correct,
else.
we don't have the capability after evaluating it that we need experts.
Any more questions on generators, salts, roofs? Okay. Moving on to maintenance equipment. Maintenance vehicles.
Who maintains the tornado sirens?
We do. Fulton Contracting. It's probably.
And I'm getting some calls from residents that they can't hear them during the testing.
Well, they haven't been going off during the winter months. So, I think the last test I'd have to find out when the last one was conducted, but
I did hear the last one,
there was.
barely. I
There's
can
also a
faintly
fallacy
hear
that when you're indoors, you're supposed to hear those. Those are set for people that are outdoors. So if you're indoors and the sirens go off, that's not the purpose of the sirens. And a lot of people
Yeah,
don't know that. It
that's
doesn't
correct.
seem common sense, but it's for people outdoors.
Yep,
Right.
And that's protocol, Dan, that they don't go off during the winter months?
correct. And what those exact months are, with January, February, it may even be December, but, yeah. And Fulton comes out every at least once a year, if not twice, to inspect them. So there's, it seems pretty basic, but things go on them.
I mean, is there a way to turn the volume up on them or no? They're pretty much
Yeah,
fixed.
they're screaming. I mean, if you're underneath there,
And how many do we have total in Darien?
1, 2, let's see, part of, we maintain, I believe it's 2, then Tri-State has 1.
One's at the end of my block at the Myers Woods at the barn.
Right, that's the one, that's ours. The other one is off of Manning Road, so 1, 2, 3,
It's one of Manny I hear.
I wanna say 4, I'd have to double check on that.
Okay. Any more questions on items on page 77? Supplies, postal, rental. Okay,
What's, the tub grinder?
Yes.
What do we use it for?
Basically what we do is chip, during the brush pickup, we generate chips. The chips that we generate are pretty coarse. So they're really useless for anything. So what we do is we bring in a tub grinder. That tub grinder basically takes those chips and recycles them. Now, we have also sales on them. The sales are half the expense, if you want to say.
Okay.
So, some residents like them.
I do.
Okay,
I use them.
and the difference is we as the city do not use them. And the reason for that is because they're not clean, if you want to say. They have, insects in them, they'll have some, weeds, for example. And obviously, when we're controlling 75th Street, we don't want to pay more for maintenance on weeds, whereas it's more manageable with homeowners, if you want to say.
I mean, I've bought some from nurseries and you can't tell the difference, to be honest with you. You really can't.
We had a big discussion several years ago, and it is a good resident benefit. Because like Dan said, you got the tub grinder at $6,500, and I think our revenue from it this year is about $3,800. So for net cost of $3,000, residents can really get a good deal on bulk mulch if they need it.
Yeah.
anything else on page 77? Okay, we're moving on to page 78. Supplies other. We've got some discretionary items there. Questions on account 30-4257, supplies other. We've got
What's the
anti-icing, de-icing.
Correct. What we want to do this year is, or next year, is expand the program. This again is the de-icing prior to a winter storm. I think everybody's familiar now with the lines that you see prior to a storm. So we wanted to introduce that more into the interior of the subdivisions versus the main thoroughways. What does it do? It basically saves time. It saves time from a point of trying to scrape ice on that first initial impact of the snow. The roads that we do right now, and I'll call them pre-treats, the snow comes off the plows a lot easier and quicker. Whereas if the snow has already been down for an hour or two before we get out there and really start plowing it, we find that we're scraping a lot more and using additional materials such as salt. So this has the opportunity to save some salt. Now, I know that I've been prophesizing for the last probably 3 years that I was gonna do a study on how much salt we've used in comparison to the beach use. And it just hasn't been apples for the last 4 years. While the storms are all different, this year, for example, we're probably down 11 storms or 10 storms from an average. Are we gonna hit that average? I don't know. Last year, we were just almost at the average of approximately 23 storms, but they weren't actual storms. They were different types of events. So I have no way of telling you that it's a 20% savings, a 50% savings. We feel that it is a savings, especially from how much salt we've used to date. and how much salt that we have requested, which you'll see later on, the salt again has been reduced for next year, the usage. So that's my best analogy that I can give the city council at this.
So is this doing more than you said, just the main ones? The main
Yes, this
streets?
would
All
introduce,
streets or just?
that's our goal, is all the streets, based on the calculation that we looked at.
Yeah, I noticed this year you started doing all the streets in my ward, not just some of them.
I know we did a couple test streets to see what the end result was. And
Okay.
Eric, you may be right, and maybe it was a couple more of your
I know
streets.
the house in front of my house was never done before, and it has been this year.
Okay, and
Dan, don't
how
we
did you
also-
find the test strip there?
Good, good.
Dan, don't we also have, mixed the juice with salt?
Correct. What it is we've been using various products over the years. This year, we're using one product. It serves as the anti and the de-icing product. Prior to a storm, the applicators will go out there and put this product on there, the lines as I refer to it. During the storm, depending on what the actual temperatures are, that we take, that we have binned, or call them silos if you want, with this product in there. The guys will load up the salt and they will spray that entire bed of salt on some of the trucks. Some of the other trucks now have a wet ice system. So they have tanks on the trucks, in which case when the salt comes out, the same product is sprayed on the salt. That keeps it from bouncing off, because salt is very light. When you hit it on its spinner, it goes all over the place. So this liquid helps intensify it, weigh it down, and lay it down, and it gets laid down in proportion with some of the equipment that's in there. It's a rate per mile. You'll see later on that we're asking for some additional improvements on some of this equipment to be able to enhance the services we provide and how we use the product.
I just want to say that a few weeks ago when we had the storm, I was out driving quite a bit through Woodridge and Westmont, and the roads were terrible. I got back home to Darien, streets were clear.
We've always had a great reputation, and when people leave Darien, they can't believe that there's even a snowstorm.
Yeah, yeah, very impressive.
Any more questions on that budget? Supplies other, 304257.
The holiday lights? 50,000?
I'm gonna leave that for city council for the committee's discussion. I think, again, waterfalls and lights, let's go for it. No, but with all due respect, I think it's
I
been.
mean, what we did was nice. I did get some
Aye.
compliments, but
Right.
to do another 50?
Yeah, I
In
don't.
terms of, God forbid, we have to still do this increase in tax, which I still think is needed, but I think we have to go through all the police. I got a couple of people say it was nice, but then when people knew what we spent, they're like, well, I don't know if I would have spent that. So,
Yeah, that's the same thing I got. I got
Is it-
pushback saying that, well, you can get by two of these speed limit signs, two of them for 15,000. Why wouldn't you want to spend the money on that could actually save lives rather than just a few lights?
Again, if the city if the committee wants to basically remove that or put a portion in there, the goal of this was to add additional.
well, my thought, Dan, is I actually think some of it could get redistributed to where it's at. I mean, point in case, or case in point, however you say that, is like the water tower. I mean, the water tower already has lights, it's lit up. We had those nice
Yeah,
balls there, which I thought looked great. But then we also had the trees. Well, let's put the trees somewhere else, because really around the clock tower, you have nice trees. And we could throw up some Italian lights around those trees and take those ones that we bought and maybe put them somewhere else in the city. I just think with some of the ones we had a little bit too much in some area, that if we redistribute it, take a year off and revisit it in another year.
And that's fine, and that was our
That's
goal.
my 2 cents.
You know, the thing is, I've received quite a few compliments via email and in person regarding the lights. You know, we had nothing before, except for a little bit on the clock tower. We spent 85,000 and we got significant compliments from people for that. I hate to see us lose that. You know, you guys look at for return on investment. Well, it's hard to measure return on investment with lights, decorations, except the number of people who compliment and say they like it. This is one of the things that you do to enhance the appearance of your community. I really believe that. You go into Westmont, you go downtown Westmont and you look at the train station area, it's gorgeous. There's a tremendous amount of lighting in that area. Go to Lamont, look at the lights in Lamont
Downers.
and
Downers got the
Downers.
same.
I mean,
But
why cut back on something that enhances the appearance of your community? You know, we're looking to sell Darien. One of the ways you sell Darien during the holidays is you light up Darien. And people will go through and they will see that, and whether or not they're gonna shop our stores or whatever, I can't measure that. But I just think this is a worthy expense because I believe it enhances who we are. 2 years ago, we had no lights. And I got so many people that were, why don't we have lights? Why does our city hall look dark during the holidays? Why does our police department, you know, all we have is a few things on the clock tower. Well, that's all we had. We had a lot of people who were real negative about it. I think this is something that you don't skimp on because I think it adds to the city and it adds to how people look at the city. And I realize that you can't measure the return on the investment with lights like this, but I really believe it's out there. People like holiday lights.
Okay, hold on a second. If everyone can turn their attention, the backup is on pages 114 and 115, because everyone's looking at the $50,000 amount. If you want the breakdown of where that money goes, that's where the breakdown is. I'm just wanting to make sure everyone, if they haven't already, can turn to page 114 and 115 in reference to holiday season lighting. Jerry?
Okay, I mean, Mayor, I understand what you're saying. At the same time, though, why don't we did it this past year. I talked to Brian, I talked to Dan, to go to the business owners as well and see what their part can be in doing stuff in their centers. And I know with John Manos did the lights around his entire thing.
That was 20,000 for
Yeah,
him, yes.
that he did. So there's things we can be doing, not just on the city, but I think if we work with this Darien Business Alliance, we start working with businesses, and if it's the strip mall on 75th by me, or it's the Jewel, and we start to reach out to the business owners to say, what can you guys do to improve your centers where people can come and shop and they have maybe lights on top? I mean, if you go through Rosemont and other areas, I mean, they do that now. So I'm not saying we can't do that, but to me, I think we should be doing a better job of working with the business owners and the landlords, and say, what can you guys do as well? We're making an effort. You see what we're doing on 75th and other areas. And then at least it's something else that we're doing to beautify the city, but it's not all coming out of our pocket.
Mike?
I'm not gonna take a position on this, it's up to the council what they wanna do. The only thing, Joe, I wanna discuss with you though, return on investment, that can be measured in a couple of ways. If everybody loved them, I mean, the decorations I thought were fantastic last year. We did get a lot of compliments, but the return on investment would come about, we're talking about potentially, okay, abating the real estate taxes this year, but next year potentially $1 million increase in there. The return on investment comes from the residents, hey, yeah, these Christmas decorations look good, but if next year that's part of what's contributing to this increase in real estate taxes, do you want more Christmas decorations, or would you rather us not raise your taxes? So that's more the way I look at it in terms of a return on investment. In terms of the ooh-ah type thing, definitely a return on the investment, no question. I love the decorations myself, and again, I'm not trying to tell the council, do it or don't, but that in my mind is how you evaluate that return on the investment.
I will say that, since I've been an alderman, I've got the most feedback on the decorations, and all of it was positive. I had even talked to Dan about, do we have to take down that tree? Is there any way we can leave that up year round, and in February turn it into red lights for Valentine's Day, and October do it on for
Halloween, whatever the case is, yeah.
Thanksgiving,
It's St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's, to have green lights.
Easter.
All of those, but I'm kind of, and again, I don't like spending money. I live in 1962 pricing usually in my head. But this is one area where I've had, I mean, people outside of Darien, you know, my son lives in Downers, so I see a lot of people in Downers who told us, oh, you guys finally got on board. And they all loved the decorations. Does that bring people into Darien? I would say to a certain extent, it makes them look at Darien as they're going through instead of just blowing through and not even knowing that they were in Darien. It's again, I know that we're trying to make sure that we don't raise taxes, and I'm 100% for that. But at the same time, that's the thing that we're finally did that to me made a big impact, and both in and out of Darien, just to kind of give us a little bit of identity.
I want to echo Ralph's comments. I received so much positive
Yeah.
feedback. No one really questioned how much we spent or
No.
didn't spend. I have 2 children that live out of town who are young adults who usually don't pay attention to things. They commented, family traveling in for holiday events commented. I think it was amazing. I too traveled to the other towns who well, we don't want to talk about Lamont because it's like, you know, a Christmas story in downtown Lamont. We're not trying to be that, but I think it was such a positive move. I would like us to see, maybe not the full amount, but I would too like to see us enhance it some more and grow a little bit more in the next year to just kind of build on what we've started.
And maybe it's just the people I'm talking to my ward, but they all like the lights until they find out how much they cost. And then it's like, why
Nobody
was-
asked
why
me the
was-
cost.
Nobody
No,
asked-
Everybody asked me the cost,
Yeah,
because
that's
I've got a
unusual.
lot of seniors.
Not one person
They're
ever
asking
brought up the cost.
What does that cost us?
It was just how wonderful it made them
First
feel.
thing out of their mouth is, what does it cost them? And I told them next year it'll be 50 grand, and they, oh, we shouldn't do that. That's the
Okay,
comments
Tom,
I'm
I think
getting.
you got something to say.
Different people.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, I do too. My husband who questions every cost, never questioned the cost.
Yeah,
get
I
questioned
agree
all
with
the time.
also what Ralph and Mary were saying. I did get more positive feedback on that, probably than anything else I've been in all the.
You've been a lot
time.
longer than I have, but boy, I was.
And I got
thrilled.
positive feedback about, and it's not even us, the park district and community
Yes,
park, and
same
it looked
thing.
great. I
Same
will say
thing.
the same thing.
You know what? We got
And-
credit for that. Someone was like, oh, I see the city to the park too. I'm
Yes.
like, sure we
And
did.
I gotta talk to Ray and make sure they do that next year and then
Yes.
put it on the North Pavilion as well.
Yeah.
So the one thing I will say that looking at the budget, what you attached from, it came up to 31,000.
Correct.
So,
And then while it came up with 31,000, I got some later pricing and I didn't get an opportunity because of the LED lights to call them C9s. And I'm sorry, it's all I wanted to mention is keep in mind that the tree that was at Lace was earmarked for City Hall. So that tree obviously went there to help, you know, what was taken down. So again, just another little
and
anecdote.
are we making that tree 4 feet higher or 8 feet higher?
It was gonna be at
I
least.
saw there's 2 4-foot things that I wasn't sure what they
Actually,
were.
we changed it, Dan, to make it look more like a tree. The
Well,
first
from
one.
that perspective, well, we
Yeah.
wanna raise that tree, and I believe it's additional 4 foot.
Okay,
You just build like a base, it looks like a present, and then it looks higher.
is that kind of?
I've seen that in places too. I mean, get it off the ground, and then you're adding, and it just looks like a,
Tom,
because that base right now just kind of goes right down to the grass anyway. If it was up a little higher.
Right, well, it goes into the grass, and, you know, there's certain mechanisms that tie it down, so I'd be cautious in saying what to build.
But in your proposal, the tree at the corner of 75th and Cass gets bigger.
Correct. And the whole enhancement on this was basically 75th Street at Plainfield. Well, that Joy sign was great. The rest is all.
So that tree would come to City Hall then.
I'm sorry,
So that tree would come to City Hall.
the one from Lace? Yeah. No, well, it may, yeah, there's opportunities to take that tree, put it here, and still have some, you know, something else, or whatever the case is. That's something we can work out.
Is there, going back to the situation, if we move that tree and what everybody's talking about, could we get one tree like Ralph or whoever mentioned it, where it can change colors, like, you know?
Yeah. They have,
You know.
they have a couple of trees that we looked at, you know, with various different colors. So again, there's that opportunity. Currently, we do the clock tower for breast cancer awareness.
Yeah,
I
Right,
mean,
so
like
there's-
I mean, think about it, if you could do LED lights and you could, you know, February Valentine's Day red.
Well, people
you
do
know.
that on their house now, they put in
Yeah.
permanent gutter lights and they
We try to
trim.
change the colors at the
Red,
clock
white, and
tower.
blue,
and-
4th of
4th of
July,
July,
you
yes.
know? I mean, if, guys, I understand where you guys are coming from with money, and we all look at it, we get down to it. But we also think about this. You Christmas decorations at your house, you spend a lot when you first get them. They last, which they're going to, right? And the bottom line is you're gonna put them up every year. And if you decide next year, oh, you know, things are gonna continue to go up. I hate to say that, but that's the reality. But
Taking all
we
my-
really pulled it off pretty nicely. We really did.
Yeah.
So.
Grinch?
Okay, so,
Let me
yes,
clarify, the mayor asked about the tree coming here, and you said we could do that, but this doesn't provide a second tree then at the Lay
No,
School.
we'd have to take a look at what the figures would all be, you know, if we were to I believe that tree's a $20,000 tree in itself. So,
we need to keep a tree at that corner.
right, you know, so again,
I think
whether,
you should keep it over there, Dan.
Yeah.
which is fine, and whether it means that we enhance the city hall a little more, we'll have to see what the dollars really get us. 100% to make sure, you know, to me, 75th Street and Plainfield is okay, but we have all that beautiful landscape in there now that we have the opportunity
Sure.
to further light up with string lights. You know, and put the different colors in there, whatever the case is. And, you know, maybe cut back a couple things on the clock tower. Again, the clock tower is, it's just a great focal point, especially with the, I'll call it the ice capades that could, you know.
But you have those nice natural trees around there. Let's throw some lights on
Lights
it.
on
It would look
Jerry,
awesome.
right, and I'm not saying that wouldn't be done, exactly. Maybe it's taking some of those trees, putting them over there on 75th, swap this for that.
And maybe on a small scale, if you had some decorations for the clock tower that were holiday related. You know, a couple of eggs for Easter, a heart for Valentine's Day,
Right, 'cause lighting's
a
all
flag
set.
for 4th of July, just a few things to put out at the same time.
Well, the Lions Club do put flags out
Yeah, they
for
put
us
yeah.
on 4th of July,
Right.
so.
So back to the price.
Okay,
Right.
let's go back to
It's
like, what's the
$31,000 roughly on your thing. What, how much more are the LED? I
I'll
mean,
settle for 35.
You got my vote for 35.
This is, you know, we can come back with plans and show a little more, and Jerry, take your stuff.
Well, and I think we should reach out to our businesses as well.
And that is a great idea.
Are we, you
Yes.
know,
That's
Expand
definitely a
the-
good idea.
Continue to do that.
yeah, and then,
The homeowners
Yeah.
to add a
Walmart to do
business to
something.
it.
I mean, just at the same time, hey, we're doing this.
But we'll continue to do that, just like we did.
Yeah, I mean-
You know, with Brookhaven, I know that Mark from Darien Point there was gonna do it, and unfortunately, they couldn't get the contract executed, if you wanna say, so
It goes
hopefully.
without question, Jerry, that we do need to ask the businesses to join with us. I mean, we asked John Manos to do it, and he did.
And
I
you know
asked
what?
him for 20 years to do that.
Yeah.
So I-
And honestly, I've been
Jerry
having
made one phone
conversations,
call.
I mean, I've had a conversation with Ryan.
Now they got
that
it.
I really think now with the Salvation Army on that corner, they as people are coming in, do something there.
Yeah.
Salvation Army, people think of Christmas, have them part of the tree lighting thing with the bell. I mean, it, you know, that's, I think, something that we
Yeah.
could sell.
I agree.
That's
Exactly.
part of what the Business Alliance is gonna be looking at.
Right.
Come in, hey, Salvation
It's
Army,
enhancing their
yeah,
business,
right.
so-
That appeals to younger people, right, okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Thanks,
we,
Eric.
we've got Jerry's
control of.
suggestion and comments about making sure we make a concentrated effort to all businesses, all mall areas, all whatever. But we've got an amended number of $35,000 that Dan has proposed. I'm trying to get a consensus now of that being modified. I sense a yes from
Yes.
Alderman Balzac. Alderman Gustafson, I sense a no.
No.
Okay. I've got it, you've got a yes from Alderwoman Sullivan. Legansky, are you still just a wait and see?
I am, but,
Okay.
I mean, I would go with a reduced number, maybe half, 25,000.
Okay, so right now we've got 35, so you're still wait and see on that. Stopinato?
I'm good.
35, and, okay, so we've got a majority here, so I would think we'd forge ahead with that for now.
And what we'll do is we'll work with April too, to everybody's point.
Sure.
With the additional enhancements, so I think that'll be a great opportunity.
But I am gonna
Jerry,
make
you'll be on
note
our
of this.
Public Works team.
I will.
to-
Yeah.
to help.
I'll string them.
Dan, one
I'll go visit
On
you.
the estimate, it said that if we ordered in January, February, there might be a discount.
Correct.
Do we know what that is, and do we know, is there a way of,
Yes,
when do we have to pay?
let me find out,
Like
because
an
we did that
after
last
holiday
year, we
sale,
did about a
right?
15% discount.
15%'s a lot.
Oh, I agree.
We'll talk to him at Chestnut Court too. Make sure he's aware of
Well,
that.
it's a little premature at
No,
this
I
point.
understand, but it'd be good to do that.
Yes, definitely.
One comment we usually make, I don't know that we've said it tonight, all the things that council is talking about, anything over 5,000 comes back to the council during the next fiscal year.
Yep.
So if the council approves lights for 35, Dan goes, he gets quotes, it comes back to the city council that's where it's formally approved to purchase. This is just to allow us to put it in the budget and you get a second shot at things, just, I guess for anybody who might be watching in a.
No, which is great,
Good.
because it's
Thank you.
on the top of all of our sheets that we're looking at. It says on the top, any existing program activity equipment costing in excess of, 5,000, that just as a reinforcement, it still has to go through again. But we always want to be mindful too, that we want to give staff guidance and directive, because when they spend time to investigate, get pricing, it's costing us money, for them to do that. We don't want to send them down on a wild goose chase. So, okay, so going back to supply other, page 78, we're still at the top. We are gonna move on to flashing speed limit signs. Okay, which, if you were to look at your supporting document, it's right after holiday lights. It's page 116, but it's account, yeah.
I like to call these my holiday lights.
Okay, there you go. That's Eric Gustafson's idea of decorating.
Correct.
And if I
Dan, I
may,
know we've had some conversations in the past regarding,
I love these things.
I do too. I'm with Eric. I
They
mean,
were great on Manning.
there's two different
Been on Oakfield
types.
too.
There's two different types in here, and City Administrator Vanna had cut the other.
Whoa! Chop!
You're welcome, everybody.
Yeah.
So actually, we had two other ones in there for 30,000. They were $15,000 a piece, and this is one of the ones that Jerry and I had spoken about, where they have the opportunity basically to take a picture of the license plate. Now, keep in mind, by taking a picture of the license plate, does not allow the police department to go and give them a ticket. A local ordinance violation, yes. Okay, so basically it's a warning that would probably come either from the police department and/or our code enforcement. So for $15,000 apiece, we could have that. Do we need it? Matter of opinion. The second set that Brian did leave in here was the ones for $15,000, which are two of them, basically is what you see currently in the subdivisions today.
Okay.
yeah, and I'm not saying everywhere, but I know like that one gentleman that always came in on 71st Street,
Right.
maybe that's where,
That's a good spot.
maybe there, instead of tying up police people to be there and sit and waste, I'm not saying waste, that's a bad word, but have to take their time to sit
Taking up
there
their
to
time.
enforce, that might be a good place for a replacement where you're doing the same thing with the equipment, not being able to reallocate that resource of the police somewhere else. I'm not saying across, but in certain circumstances, it might make sense, Dan.
Right, and in
That
this-
that was our conversation, so. I wanted to
Correct,
know.
correct. And, what we typically do when we get these reports, it's, a lot of times we've proven that it's a perception. Well, it's a perception. We go out there and we put counters out there. The counters that we put out there, no one knows they're out there. So, it's not like, I gotta slow down, I gotta, hose the old one. The old counters used to have a hose across the street, if you recall. So there is none of that. Technology's gone. So we analyze the technology. We vet it with the police department. We run, typically what it is it's the people that live on that block. is what we found. So
With
once.
these new ones, would it actually have a sign that says radar enforced or something where people actually know this thing's doing more than just record your speed?
People have asked me, and I said, yeah, sure, they take your
Yeah.
picture. It
Sure,
scares
give 'em
them.
the-
I mean, we know it doesn't, but
I know.
We're not gonna
Little white
say
lie.
that, we're not gonna say that, but if somebody wants, yeah, the staff is not gonna say that, but if somebody wants to give them the placebo effect, hey, it's up to, whoever, but, yeah, no, ours do not record.
and these are solar. These would be solar ones too.
That is correct.
I know the ones by the high school are hardwired.
No, those are, yeah, yes, they are, I'm sorry,
Okay.
yes.
These the same as the ones that are on 67th right now?
Correct.
I hate to be a negative Nelly, but I go up and down Manning Road a lot to go to Home Depot from my house. And there's one further down, closer to Lyman.
Yep.
There's one, not, right about where Elizabeth I did.
Right.
And I'll be honest, I don't see that they're having any impact on slowing cars down. Because I see cars going 30, 35 miles an hour, and the sign is showing 30, 35 miles an hour.
No battery left.
But, I walk that Manning Road 2 or 3 times a week from one end to the other. And it's surprising when you see a car coming up and they're speeding and then all of a sudden it flashes, they do slow down.
Oh, yeah, again, I've seen it, it's been proven. To what the percentages are, probably 20%, it depends.
You're always gonna have
It makes you, a motorist cognizant of it, whether they wanna,
Now, if we can get them to quit taking a left turn out of Walmart, it'd be nice. I almost got hit there the other day walking across the street. Some guy blew through it and took a left out of there. Just missed me.
Oh, to go down Lyman instead of going to
Yeah.
75th?
Yep.
Huh.
There's no left-hand turn.
Actually, you can
There's
cut
no
right
left
across to
turn.
the other shopping
Yeah, I
center,
can't
turn around and then go right.
Well, I usually, if I'm not going right to go to
I got that
75th,
close
I'm
to
cutting over to, like today, for instance, I went to Aldi and then I cut over to go to the cleaners. So I just went straight across. I guess I never realized you couldn't turn left because I never would go left.
I shoot across and then I turn around.
That's what I do too, yeah, I see the sign, so it's.
I can work.
Okay, I didn't, interesting.
It's a way to circumvent.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Dan, do you think there's any, I'm sorry.
It's okay, I think he's got a battery issue on your computer.
But Dan, is there any benefit sometimes where you think where we could have that,
Those signs.
where then it helps Chief Thomas with having to put people out there?
No
we
matter
save on
what, it starts out with the perception. After the perception, it becomes reality, or it's just a basic enforcement for a week or two, is what we found. And like I said, it's basically the residents that are within that quadrant are the ones that are speeding.
I mean, I like to get a couple of them that are portable that we can just move periodically.
That's,
Is there
I
a
would
problem
not
with that?
recommend that.
Why is that?
Number one, they're maintenance items. The police department did, thank you. The police department did have them in the past.
Okay, right, I remember that.
There's more, who's moving them around? What are they really doing? They're there for a couple days. If they're solar, they work for a day, they go out for a day. Willowbrook has them, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
too. So if I was to do,
Yep.
are they using them all the time? I think I would recommend that we do some type of joint venture, maybe perhaps Willowbrook. And instead of buying it, and again, it's another storage issue.
Yeah.
And those things are good size.
Okay.
So, I would recommend that before we bought them, to see if there's really a need for that.
Are there any more questions? Obviously, it's noted that originally, I think Dan wanted to get 4, it was reduced to 2. These are the flashing speed limit signs that do not photograph or capture the license plate.
Record under holiday lights, 2 more.
Any opposition to this staying in the budget? Okay,
I want more.
okay. Anything more on small tools and equipment? We're moving on. So I
Yes, I have one question, Dan, that Vector truck.
Yeah.
I know we dealt with that last year, but one of the things I brought up was, are we going to be letting other communities use it? And if so, are we gonna be charging them for it? have other communities used it, and have we charged them, have we been able to generate any revenue off of it?
Generating revenue, not 100%, no. Have other people used it?
Any percent?
Yeah, yes,
We have gotten some revenue from it.
yes.
Approximately how much, any idea?
$100, maybe 200, nah. When you look at revenue, am I looking at the total net or what's after expenses?
Gross,
Gross, 1,000.
1,000? Okay, thank you.
So, I'm sorry, so on the Vector tools, is that an enhancement to it? Something
Yes.
that we didn't have before?
Yes.
And it's what again?
As far as the tools themselves?
Yeah, what is
The
it?
tools, for
What's it?
example, are, the rear yard, we get calls enough, I should say, not periodically, about the rear yard, whether they're existing pipes that are within the easements, and they're typically smaller pipes, and/or some of the pipes that we may have put in 15, 20 years ago. Are they getting, do they have the opportunity to basically fill with sediment to a point, but it's not gonna basically make or break them. In some cases, we do have roots in there. So in this particular case, the hose that we have is a large hose. It's basically an inch, inch and a half diameter hose. And I believe it's up to 5,000 PSI that this thing can basically blow through. Well, if you take this inch and a half hose and you're putting it through this 4-inch pipe, and it's an HDP pipe with perforated holes in it, we're gonna blow right through it, and we're gonna blow through the ground with it as well. What this does for this particular case is it buys us additional smaller diameter hose that's on a reel, for example, that could be reeled to the backyard, and to basically address resident issues with, clogs or things of that sort. Matter of fact,
So you don't have to be just by the street anymore within it gives you, I got you.
right, and for example, right by Farmingdale, near your house over there on Sawyer, we need that opportunity right now as we speak. Currently, we've been borrowing it from DuPage, to try things out, and it's working.
Now, do we charge for that service to do some personal homes pipe, clean out a pipe?
No, what's all we do is storm sewers, not sanitary sewers. I wanna clarify that.
Not drainage pipe for sub pumps and stuff.
The sump pump, no, those are private.
Right.
We would not touch them just due to liability, because
Right,
God
that's what I
knows,
was gonna
yeah.
say, yeah.
No, this is all within the easements, dedicated stormwater easements, for example.
So anytime the Vector truck's been lent out to another community, we've recouped the costs of labor and time and material?
Yes.
And how many times you think in the last year that's happened?
Twice,
Just twice?
yes.
Okay.
Wait a minute, but our gross was only $1,000 in those cases?
Yes. The second one was, the first one is right when we started actually talking about that, so there really was no set.
There's no charge on that?
Correct, there was a reciprocation.
So
Reciprocation
this-
for
Okay, so this $1,000, how long did they have our machine?
a day and a half at best. Not when I say a day, let's put it in hours, a total of maybe 8 hours.
Yeah, because we used to pay, wasn't it like about $14,000 a month? Or forget what it was, at least $14,000 a month. So I know it was a pretty heavy.
Yeah, it was a hefty figure, I think it
This
was
is 23,000.
75,000 for a year, which basically included, I think it was up to 9 months. Obviously, we were using it during the winter.
Are there any more opportunities for, I'm just looking at ways of generating revenue, so we don't have to look at real estate taxes or taxes on our residents, if there's a way of generating revenue from this.
There's always an opportunity, whether or not, municipalities or other neighbors want to get on a maintenance program, or if they want to use it as an emergency. If somebody's gonna not have a maintenance program and there's an emergency, well, you're gonna pay close to $2,000 for that one time, just for that one time, 4 hours.
I know, we used to spend a lot of money on it, that's why, I mean, I'm sure it's helped in terms of our expenses, but it was over $500,000 purchase
I mean,
too.
Willowbrook knows we have one now, and
Do you advertise that you have it?
yes, and, we're not putting it on a marquee panel per se, but.
Yeah, put it on the marquee.
Okay. But Burr Ridge, I believe, was, and I don't know if they had received it or not. I think they were in the process of also getting them. Westmont, I believe, has maybe 2 of them. DuPage County has 3 of them. So Downers Grove has at least 1, if not 2. So Woodridge, so it's just a machine of the trades is what it ends up being for everybody at this point. Well, yeah, we always look for those opportunities.
Okay.
Any more questions on small tools equipment? Okay, training and education, 30-4263. Anything there?
Arborist assessment training, I question, is this like to get a backup arborist or?
Currently, we do have 2 arborists in place, okay? And again, it's one of those that, okay, when John gets ready to leave, that we have somebody that's knowledgeable of our current inventory, what the current issues are, what will be the current issues. So really, it's just, and again, that's, we'll call it a sideline for them. They're certified, they're staying in training, they're speaking with residents, running programs, and at the same time, they're doing their
I gotcha.
regular skills.
I got no problem with that, I was just curious on that, so.
Okay, moving on, telephone. Got some iPads. Backup is on page 131.
And those iPads are, I'm sorry, Mary, can you give me 1 second? I had to reboot my
No
computer
problem.
here.
Yeah, for everyone else, when you're looking, it's 30-4267 under telephone. It's 4 iPads for work order software, for field crews. As Dan reboots, does anyone have any questions about that?
I assume a lot of that is for the software, because iPads don't cost $1,500 each.
That's page 137, Mayor.
131.
Page 131.
131. Almost. Yes, this is for the, it's called an expansion. It's part of it's all part of GIS. GIS, obviously, we're starting to move into the technology, been moving into the technology to know where water mains are, where fire hydrants are, where certain cables are. And these iPads are for the field, for guys in the field. So, you know, typically we go out there with a set of plans. Okay, you got the wrong plans, go back this way. If you've noticed, we have the opportunity to go look at GIS zoning, for example, to be able to pull up every single property and determine, you know, what's the zoning classification on it. You know, we also have now the water main. We're still working on the water main, needs to get, I'll call it fine-tuned, but we have the water main on a GIS right now with the valving. We're moving into the hydrants, like I said, streetlights before. So again, this is for iPads for the field crews.
I was just wondering why it was that expensive. Is it, I mean, are those construction
Yes.
also?
Tough books, they really.
They don't have a nice leather one like
Yeah,
mine?
no, it's not like yours, it's not like mine, it's definitely a lot,
Okay.
they're rugged, they're
Right.
made for the elements.
Got my iPad Pro over here with the keyboard. Okay, anything else on that? Moving on to, I think uniforms is pretty straightforward. Utilities. Vehicles, gas and oil. Nothing, we'll go right to contractual services, 30-4325. There's a couple of items, Public Works, work order, Inframap software, half of that, and the other half goes to water, and then Public Works salt shed wall monitoring. Those are pages 132 and 149 in the backup. All Any questions on those items?
Can you just talk about the salt shed now?
Sure.
What's happening there?
Yeah, as I briefly touched base on
Yeah.
it earlier, basically what it is the momentum from the machine, loading and during unloading operations, the force that's being put against the walls by loading and unloading again. It's caused some cracks. Again, the cracks, whether or not they're superficial and/or are they structurally at a point where we need to build a brand-new salt shed? The answer is no. We have gone back to the manufacturers, engineers, we have gone back to our engineers, our city engineers, structural engineers, and it's inconclusive. So by being inconclusive, what we've done is, and this has all been developing here during the budget season, is we were able to find these crack sensors. And these crack sensors get mounted on the walls. I believe we ordered up to 10 of them. Those crack sensors get mounted on the cracks permanently, and then we're able to go out there, whatever the frequency will be, whether it be, my goal right now is maybe on a monthly basis during the winter, and to record what the movement has been. Obviously, it's gonna be in millimeters, but that's the way this is designed. We're gonna take those readings, mark them, mark the locations of them, and hopefully have some type of data that's gonna be able to be given to the engineers, and hey, engineers, take a look at this. Is there a concern now with how much movement there is? There is steel in these walls as well. So obviously the concrete is a pre-stressed concrete. Does the current salt have the opportunity to leach into those cracks with condensation, moisture, whatever the case is, and help deteriorate that faster? And is the momentum from the machines helping to, I'll call it, decay this even further? So again, we put this monies in there for some type of repair. Is this a full repair? Absolutely not. Is there a concern for a repair? I can't tell you that. So again, by spending the first $1,000, I believe it was, and to be able to put these monitors on there, it'll give us an opportunity to seal the cracks perhaps, and or maybe there is no issue at the end of the day.
Any other questions on the salt shed, wall monitoring, or the software for Public Works? Okay, we'll turn to page 79. Top is janitorial services. Then going into forestry. Quite a few discretionary items there regarding fertilization. Account 30-4350, starting on page 150 in your backup. Discussion. Any discussion, Dan? Any items you want to point out? Any discussion with the council members?
As far as the forestry goes, let me make sure we're on the right one. Mary, I'm sorry.
It's okay, we're looking at page 150,
Okay.
landscape fertilization,
All right, and then-
in the amount of $72,267.
Correct. What this encompasses is treatments for fertilization along 75th Street, turf, as well as the planters at the clock tower, at our detention facilities, at the city hall, as well as the water plants. So, we've been leaving this as a discretionary item for the last several years. Increases, obviously went up probably 3 years ago, after the one company that we did have a good service with got bought out by True Green, I believe it was. The end result is that we went back out to bid. These are the best prices that are currently out there, and this is part of a 3-year, this, I believe, will be the 3rd-year contract extension.
So do you think most of this is because of price increases and not because, I mean, we've had these expenses, I'm sure, before on 75th and all that, so,
Correct.
I mean, because even compared to like, 2024, we were at, 303,000. You're estimating this year coming in around, 280, and now we're up 373. So, I mean, it just seems that, is it all related to price increases? I know we also have that $20,000 replacement, but that's only if we get the grant, correct?
And yeah, and I'm sorry, now you're looking at the budget. I was only referring to the actual fertilization portion.
Well, but that's part of the 70,000 is probably 50 of it is the,
Sure, you're not on page 150.
No, we're, 150 is all fertilization.
Right. So I didn't.
This is all
Same as what I
fertilization.
was last year,
Yes,
except
it is.
for
It's,
weed control is slightly
okay.
up. Oh, no, it's the same.
And my
thing is-
favorite topic on
We'll go
this
down
is
to the,
us doing 75th Street and not getting any money from the county. Are we still in a position where we're doing all the work and incurring all the costs and not getting anything back?
they're reimbursing us for.
What are we getting?
They're reimbursing us for mowing. I believe that mowing is close to 60, I'd have to double check, but I believe it's in the vicinity of $68,000.
It was between 50 and 60, used to be 50, I think they upped it this year, closer to
Correct.
60.
Yeah, this is, thank you,
What are we
Mike.
spending in total then on 75th Street compared to the 68?
I'm not, well,
your
tree
first-
planting, I'm not sure what you're
Yeah,
mulching.
everything.
fertilization.
There's different components of it. I mean, are you looking at our labor, our
Yeah, I'm
equipment?
looking, if we didn't do it any longer, what kind of money would we be saving by not doing 75th Street?
Oh, easily, probably 150,000.
Okay.
And that means us doing nothing.
Right.
nothing- Right.
But you still have the personnel, it's not like you're gonna eliminate personnel. Are you including
Well, we-
personnel time?
As far as for 75th Street, the part-timers, the summer helpers, the answer is yes. We still have the water plants, we still have the detention facilities, and we still have our facilities, water, public works, and city hall.
I have two questions. It's still sort of on this area. We've got two new items. One's called hardwood mulch for 8,500 and hardwood mulch install for 11,400.
This year,
I'm sorry?
this year we did break that out, okay, and again, that was getting back, Mike, can you let me know what page you're looking at, cause I'm going
Page
back.
79, account 4350.
All right, let me,
And
yes, and the hardwood mulch is something of what I was saying earlier. When we produce mulch, our mulch is,
Yeah, I understand we're buying it, but if you look a few lines up above, we have entrance signs, mulch and weed, clock tower, mulch area, city complex, mulch rock landscaping.
Right.
And these are new items. It's about $20,000 of hardwood mulch and
That-
hardwood mulch install. How does that differ from the mulch that we're doing a couple lines above?
right. Give me one sec. All right. 79. So Mike, you're under 30, 43, 50, correct?
4350, account
Okay.
4350, right?
And you are at the mulch, let me,
85,
hardwood mulch, okay, you have,
8,500 and then 11,400, the hardwood
Correct.
mulch install. Those are new this year.
Correct.
They're under maintenance.
Correct.
The lines up, just above it talk about all the mulching. How is this mulch different than that mulch?
that's de-weeding.
Says
Removing
mulch.
weeds.
Says mulch.
This is mulch with, again, it's classified inaccurately. That is the mulch rock landscaping, and that's at the city hall for removing the weeds from the actual mulch and or the rocks that are here at the city hall. I've got a separate price. I can clean that up and I will revisit it. But the hardwood mulch is something that needs to be installed basically on an annual basis.
Annual or semi-annual? A lot of places do it every couple of years, but
It could be. This is the first year that we've actually put the line item in there because last year is when we started, we cut it back. Just as we found out how much that mulch was, the hardwood mulch. It lasts longer. And when we put all that landscaping in there, I think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we used the mulch that was in the contract for the plantings, and we never remulched after that. But we did do the weed maintenance, which is probably where we're getting that, line item, let's see, item D, City Hall, Complex, mulch, rock, and landscaping.
Right, and it's those first several lines that have page numbers next to them, I'll specify the areas, but Mike's looking at the one, like, a couple down,
Right.
hardwood mulch, generic, and hardwood mulch install. So what are those areas versus what are the ones above that are all listed?
There is no mulch installed above. That's the problem. There's no new mulch in any of those line items that you may say mulch in there.
Okay, so that's for fertilization and weeding, is what you're
Correct.
saying?
Correct. So that line
Okay.
item needs to be cleaned up to reflect de-weeding from mulch beds and/or rock beds. So
The line item that's down further, that's to actually acquire the hardwood mulch, and that's to then install it?
That is correct.
Okay.
If you look at those two, City Hall complex, mulch, rock, landscaping, it wouldn't make sense. Yeah, I know it's a de-weeding process in both of those items, the existing mulch and the rock areas.
Okay. If the label could be more reflective of what it is, I
Correct.
guess, and would be helpful, then we wouldn't think it's repetitive.
I understand, and I will have that edited.
Now, on the tree replacement, the 100K grant, is the revenue up on top somewhere? Because this is
It's in revenue. It's under grants on the revenue page.
Under revenue
So it's
page.
wash.
Yes,
So it washes out then.
correct, and what I
Will we
did,
be in jeopardy now? I heard.
I don't know, it's a potential, and that's why you look at it, here's what I've done is, and again, my goal was to have this 100,000 of tree planting needs to be placed in selected areas of town that the grant allows. The 20,000, I'd left to put in discretionary, but I'd still like the opportunity to have that 20,000 to plant trees in the non-selective areas as we've been doing for years.
So last year we had 27,000 for general tree replacement. Did we use it?
Yes. I cut it back a little bit due to the fact that some of this is gonna be an overlap. So really, if this program goes away, are we short about $7,000? That could be a potential. The answer is yes.
And how many trees do we get for the 20?
20,000, I believe, 40?
Ballpark 40.
That sounds about right, Pat.
I'm just writing some stuff down, so that's why I'm not.
It looks like there's 200 trees for the 100,000.
That's the 100,000, correct.
Yeah, to be then planted by the fall 2026. Would it make sense to plant those in 2025, just in case they cut this off?
It says 2026 in there, that's gotta be a typo.
Yeah, it says by the end on page
Oh,
157.
the program itself with the reporting requirements, they'll be planted by 2025, but there's an ongoing maintenance, reporting, for this grant.
When will we know that we're not gonna get it or we are gonna get it?
Right now, it's still alive.
Start planting tomorrow.
So we're gonna put a proposal out, the RFPs didn't go out because we maintain the RFPs, the maintenance, we have to just report that to Morton Arboretum, so we're in cautious mode, if you wanna say. So we have plenty of time from my perspective, to get documents at least prepared. We've done legwork already.
And if it goes away, it's okay.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, we were
Quick.
fortunate to get it, but no cost at this point.
And those trees they have designated areas that they're gonna go determined by Morton Arboretum.
It's through the Morton Arboretum is the distributor of the grants, and I wanna say it was the USDA that was sponsoring it, and they're the ones that dictated where the canopies, needed to be put in place.
Is that just a general kind of statement of where they can go, or then they don't get very specific, do they?
Yeah. Yeah, it is specific.
Is it?
It's site specific, yes.
Just don't put any in my yard.
Any more questions on that tree replacement program? Anything else on forestry? Account 30-4350. Okay, moving on to streetlight, operational and maintenance. Any questions there?
Just seems like we continue to have quite a few lights out. Are they just burnt out, or were they, is there
Well, there's an issue, there was an issue with the original, I believe they were called Leotech heads. They've been under warranty. The warranty expires next, year. While you say they're ongoing, I think we've almost replaced every single light in the city. And the manufacturer has probably picked up 90% of them. We also put in place a contingency plan that we would have certain heads on the shelf, so we weren't out for whatever, too long of a time.
Any other questions on streetlights? Mosquito abatement, street sweeping, 30-4373.
We don't, excuse me, mosquito abatement, we don't do the spraying any longer, do we?
Haven't done that for,
It's been a long time.
done that for.
Okay, so there's no plans to start that again? Okay.
Street sweeping, May, September, October. Any questions on those discretionary amounts?
I think the only issue I've had in this in the past has been timing of the leaves coming down after the last sweeping occurred.
We still come out there, and again, I can't reiterate enough that if residents see additional leaves after December, we're well into December. This is our guideline right here. So
Yeah.
we're still out there in December sweeping leaves. I think the program is run very efficiently, timely. And this year, I believe we had 2 calls. One was, I believe, on Chippewa. Ted, I think that was, you had identified, right, Cherokee, excuse me. And, again, we went out there, verified it, and it was completed within the next, couple days. So we just can't time, there's no way to time when the maple trees are gonna fall over here, the ash trees over here, or the maple trees in this quadrant, whatever the case is.
So if a resident has an issue and after the last street sweeping, do they actually call you guys up and do you come out and then sweep that area?
The answer is yes, but typically we should be ahead of that ball game, verifying that everything has been swept. Will we miss something? Probably. If they are, it's a onesie or twosie, but we still accommodate that.
And people should not be blowing these into the street.
No.
I did stop a couple people last year who were doing that.
Yeah, it's an ordinance, and again, if we need to enforce that further, we've done that in the past.
And then was one also complained that, look at all the leaves that are down in front of my house. And after they just blew them out in front of the house.
Alrighty then.
Yeah.
Anything else on street sweeping? Okay, drainage project. Pages 159,
Yeah, so
160,
what area
161.
is this one for the 20?
Let me kind of back up a minute here. As you recall, the city council's been very gracious over the previous years to put a lot of funding into this program. It's been a success. It's been so successful that we're currently down to a maintenance. This $20,000 that you refer to, Eric, is basically just the annual cost of our portion of a drainage I'm sorry, these are the miscellaneous ones for 20,000. The 85,000 is the discretionary. That 85,000 is basically our starting points for drainage projects. So that 85,000 in additional, let's call it 50%, close to 50% would be coming from residents. So really, it's $160,000, $170,000 budget, of which 85,000 is our full cost. The 20,000 is miscellaneous things, for example, something in a rear yard needs to be replaced, whether it's an inlet, pipe, et cetera, et cetera.
Is that 85 in here somewhere?
It's page 159, and it's, and then on page 79, you can
Yes.
see it, account 30-4374. It's annual rear yard city cost, 85,000.
I'm sorry, Eric, I wasn't sure if you were referring to page 79.
The summary page, Eric?
Yeah, where is that?
Okay, this is this page.
It's 85?
Yeah.
That's the proposed budget.
So does that include the one at
That's-
Sawyer,
that's- okay.
potentially?
No, that's under capital.
That's under capital.
And how is that split between ourselves and the residents?
85,000?
Yeah,
85,000 is our cost, 100% there. So in other words, if a project, this budget is really between the residents and us, it would be, let's call it 150,000. Or if we were to basically, split it in half,
so
170,000.
it's,
About 60/40,
About
60 us,
60.
Correct,
them,
yes,
roughly.
yes.
and is this gonna be, I mean, cause I thought we were done last year.
Again, we spent, funds for this were close to 150,000, if not more, about 2 years ago, and for almost 2 years, 3 years straight. So it's been reduced, this is a maintenance. Again, will we use it this year? I can't tell you that. I mean,
But are there specific homes now that have been determined?
no,
to be
there's
done
no
now?
current inventory
So
on
you
this.
have, okay, so you don't have, this is just,
Well, you said you have 2 requests for field review.
Yeah, those are,
But they
exactly,
haven't
but
been,
not,
they
right,
haven't been,
slotted or, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, is it 60/40 the way? To me, the thing I hear about this is that people complain that, well, the city spent all this money on a few homes on the other side of town. Why is the city spending money on those few homes? Why don't they pay for the entire fix themselves? Is what I hear back from them.
I'm not sure what that means, to be honest with you.
Well, because, I mean, all of a sudden a neighbor, next to me, okay, complains that they just saw on the other side of town, okay, the city spent $50,000 on a water project for 5 houses. Why should the city be paying for that, spending that kind of money? Why don't the homeowners themselves pay for it all?
Well, I think that's a policy question more than,
Yeah,
The city, it's a shared cost, though. The city's not
Yes.
paying for the whole thing.
no, not the whole thing, but why pay for any? Why not just
Would your
manage?
neighbor or your people, if
Why
they
not
had an
just
issue,
manage-
want the
Well,
city helping them
people-
too?
Well, the people in my area, I had some water problem in the back of my yard, I fixed it myself. And so did my next door neighbor in the house next to them. We all got together and fixed it ourselves. So, I mean, people will fix it themselves rather than, unless the city comes by and does it for them.
well, Eric, it
Well, you
started about
requested.
12 years ago.
I
when we
understand
did
that.
this.
It's been doing
And we
that
did
for
it
a while.
because there were a lot of properties that were in areas that were not part of Darien when these properties were built. They weren't built
I
proper
thought
drainage.
we were at a point now
We are at the point now.
that it should end.
The philosophy has always been that
It will end.
if you enhance
Owen.
the property of the homeowner by working in a joint agreement with them, you enhance the overall you enhance their property value, and thus you bring more value to the city.
well, let me give you an example real quick. We have capital projects coming up here, and it's on Plainfield, backing up off of Linden. It's a larger project, but in that particular project itself, there's drainage concerns with 3 people. There's
Yeah.
no way that those 3 residents can do that on their own, just because of where the water sits. They need a carrier pipe that needs to be put into an infrastructure that was never adequately done. So again, there's different situations and there's different mechanisms and different cost methodologies that make this whole pie come together. It's not just 50,000 here, it might be 5,000 here, but every resident needs to spend the first $1,000.
And Dan, what you're saying, I think on some projects, we can go on the easement that's granted, but somebody might still have to spend $5,000 on their property.
Oh, it's
to
only,
get it to them.
listen, all the work that was done in my ward, maybe this is part of it, was only done from the easement to the street.
Correct.
Everything else from the sidewalk back to the backyard is what homeowners did.
And that's a good
But
point.
at the same time, though,
Infrastructure.
even if I did something in the backyard, where's the water gonna go? I mean, when you've got water coming through the whole subdivision, it has to work its way through retention pond, and it has to come through everybody's homes. And it sits on the sidewalks, and it becomes ice, and it sits on the street, and then the entire street is nothing but a sheet of ice. And then you've gotta mess with your plows, and you have to put up with the 10 water main breaks we had last year, probably because of all that water that sat there over the years, which brings the crews out and, have to fix the pipe. So it's not just, okay, we're fixing a little bit of water in the backyard that I could have done on my own. It goes way beyond that. And maybe it was just neglected for 10 years in my ward by my predecessor or whatever, but it was never done. And it's been a major problem. A major problem. And I've talked to the guys in the snowplow crews with the ice that they used to have to put up with on the street, the slips, the falls, on that entire side of the street, you can't walk because every time you go between everybody's sump pump area, it's nothing but ice.
Jerry,
Because the water has nowhere to go.
won't,
You know.
with that project that you're talking about, the individual homeowners that are gonna have to decide whether they tie into the system, correct?
Absolutely. And the same thing that happened on my street, I'd like to do on Sawyer because they have the same problem. If there's not enough participation, I don't want to do it. I mean, I think people need to say, listen, we're going to step up, you're going to invest some money along with it. If there's no participation, then that's fine, but it goes beyond just fixing water when you have to deal with water main breaks and ice on streets, and I mean, it snowballs really quick.
Dangerous.
But like to circle back, historically though, like as Tom pointed out, this has been a program that the city has done for in excess of 12 years. And I'm fairly confident, because even my end of town is probably the newest. And there's been projects in my end of town. And there's been projects that in my years on city council have not gone forward because there has not been enough participation, and there's projects that have. But at the end of the day, I think we're at a good point, but we'd be remiss not to think that some things might come up. And that's what you're saying here is we need to have money in the budget so that if requests are made, that we have a project share still in place, because this program, even though it's very much declined in terms of participation and need, it still needs to exist.
Correct, and then next year we'll evaluate it again and maybe cut back another 10,000, 15,000.
But it won't be spent unless it's requested.
That's exactly it, there's a cost share, and if, depending on, if it's anything if a job is under $5,000, obviously it's not gonna come back. But we vet every job that comes in back to the city council
Very
in
much so.
excess of that.
And even like on Sawyer, in the last month, how many water main breaks on Sawyer?
Those are constant.
exactly.
I get your emails, constant breaks.
There's 3 in 1 month.
No, and then there's some great justification to it. When I first came on here 20 years ago, we had no program. Our ditches were, keep in mind that our ditches were our curbs and gutters. From there, we made sure that the water was able to drain, and we basically took the rear yard drainage program and started the rear yard drainage program. I want to say it's got to be close to 18 years ago now, and we kept on enhancing it ever since. So in my opinion, it's a great program. It helps residents. Residents don't know what to do or where to get it. They just push the problem on.
Well, they could still get oversight from the city, but then most of the cost would be paid by the
There
residents.
would be no oversight from the city because residents will do what they want. We can tell them what to do, what to use, but it's gonna come down to a cost factor. At the same time, we'll be back to where we are today.
And Dan's last point is the biggest one, because a resident solves their problem by pushing it into their neighbor's yard. And that is how it gets solved. I'll build it up here. Now the water flows that way.
Right. I've seen
Not my
that
problem
firsthand.
anymore.
That firsthand is issues in Carriage Greens because Carriage Greens existed, was built before it was the city, and and thanks to intervention by the city and residents, a lot of things could have kept going down a bad route, but the city intervened and through this program caused a lot of great positivity. And I think it's important that we keep this, and hopefully there won't be a need, which is a win for the residents and a win for the city financially.
100%.
Okay. Anything else on rear yard drainage? Okay, so moving on to, I think that wraps up page 79 unless there's any more questions on page 79 under drainage projects. Okay, moving on to tree trimming, page 80, 30-4375, tree trimming. Page 162 in the backup. Any questions on tree trimming? Okay. Going down to capital purchases, 30-4810, and improvements, 30-4815, equipment.
Dan, can you talk about the vehicle, e-vehicle?
Yes, it's not, no longer will be an EV vehicle.
Thank
If
God.
anything, it's gonna be I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought on it. It's hybrid, thank you.
Right.
Hybrid.
Good.
Any other questions on the items on backup pages 163 through 220 in the discretionary account that amounts to $187,310? Under equipment, capital purchases? Okay. Anything else on this budget?
Dan, quick question, how are we all up to date now on trucks?
On equipment, yeah, I think if you notice, you're gonna start seeing a reduction here on equipment. I think this is the first year that you start to see reductions on equipment. Why is that? The maintenance. Maintenance is number one. And I can't brag enough, just keeping things in great condition, washing them after storms, looking at them. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't put it all inside. We understand that, but we're gonna do the best that we can to make this equipment, shine compared to where we were, again, 15 years ago.
But
12 years ago.
we don't have any trucks on back order still, do we?
No, there's one we're waiting for, and I think it's gonna come in right before, May.
Okay. Is that it for streets department? Okay. Okay, I'm doing a time check. It is 9 o'clock. Does anyone need a bathroom break? If not, I'd like to get us into capital projects. A snack break, anything? Okay, let's keep rolling. So we do have an updated capital projects summary page that was dispersed.
The revenue transfer and all the expenses. and
Right.
everything.
So we are on, what was the sum, I got rid of my old one. I guess page 223, so maybe 222? Okay, so we're looking at capital projects fund budget. And Brian handed out a updated version of this page that indicated the reduction of the transfer from general fund for fiscal year '28 forecast.
I'm sorry, tonight I only handed out the general
He
fund
only handed out
cover.
the general
I
fund.
didn't want to get it confused, so I ended up, you
Okay.
have that one, but I didn't hand it out yet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering, I
Okay.
didn't get that one.
Okay, so we're gonna start with capital projects summary page. Dan, are you on that okay?
Yes.
Okay, you wanna start? Anyone have any questions on that? Under revenue?
just one comment from Brian. I think the revenue, the projected interest income at $800,000 for next year could be a little bit high. Fund balance is going down and the interest rate's been decreasing gradually. I'd probably put it in closer to 700.
Okay. Mike, how about going out? I'll probably take that down a little bit, you're thinking too?
Yeah, it's a
Fund
hard call,
balance is
but yeah.
Yeah.
Because the balance is gonna be going down each year too, you know, the fund balance as well as, it's hard to tell.
I'll take a look at those, Mike.
So Mike, you're suggesting that under interest income for fiscal year 26 request, you think it should go from 8 to 7? And then potentially for 27 and 28, reduce it as well?
Decrease somewhat, yeah.
Okay.
Take a look at it.
Okay. And Brian, you're gonna,
Yeah, I'll
okay. Sorry, I need a drink of water. Okay. Anything else? We'll be going into the supporting documents for,
What about
Capital?
the grants number? 587,000?
You wanna know what those are?
Yeah.
Is that your question? Hold on
Yeah,
one
it's a big number.
Well,
None of
as we
that's
get into
going
the
away,
county
is it?
project on Plainfield, that's 400,000. And part of what Dan is doing in the streets, there's going to be a reimbursement, or with the concrete from the fire district at 187,000, so that's the 587.
And
Yeah,
none-
asphalt,
And
yeah.
none of that's gonna go away.
What do you mean, none of that's gonna go away?
Grants.
Grant,
Pulled back.
grant money.
Oh,
Those aren't any federal.
yeah, they're not,
I guess I was checking.
They're just actually government reimbursements from the fire.
IGA's
account.
really what they are.
The current, your grant of projected at 30,000, right now, there's nothing in there. We're still anticipating getting something.
Well, we got another letter I have to ask Dan about, we had to do a environmental.
Oh, yeah, there's, someone just came in from, we thought we had one grant. We've been told that we need to do some additional, I'll call it engineering categorical exclusions, blah, 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 which may cost us more to do than what the grant is worth. So we're evaluating that right now. We just got that literally yesterday.
Dan, and I'm sorry, also, I mean, we have done some work with the county, I don't know if that reimbursement at all comes any this year, but I'll have to check that, Mike, to see if there's another, we had a couple small grants out there that popped up from years ago, we were surprised.
It's not a major number.
No, but I'll check it.
Yeah, 30,000, I think Brian is the best earmark for it at this point.
Okay. Anything else on revenue as we're looking at this? Okay, so then we're gonna go ahead and over to the summary pages with capital, starting with the stormwater ditch projects, that's page 223, account 25-35-4376, with backup pages on 224 and 225. Any questions about that? Okay. Heading down to sidewalk replacements, 25-35-4380. Several pages of supporting documentations for that. Any questions?
So Dan, with the grinding, so are we, are we at a point now where we're grinding certain blocks instead of replacing?
The answer is
Overall
yes.
saving some money?
The answer is yes, and we're in the last phase. I'm gonna say we're 50% done, we have 50% more on the grinding. Once we're completed with that, we're gonna evaluate very soon here what we've done to see if there's anything that needs to be removed now just because of the grinding operation, for whatever reason, may have heaved the remainder of it. Again, I don't know, but I feel it's a great program. We've got a lot of savings, and while we've got the savings, I do want to let the council know that one of the biggest concerns that we have right now is that we need to go back into our ADA sections and basically put in what's referred to as a curb along the actual ramp area. Okay, so it's been out there, it's been out for debate. You know, is there liability? Is there a perception? the bottom line is that we decided that we're gonna move forward with it and be with the standard, with the American Disabilities Act. So that's good.
So every corner that has that red thing now needs something else done?
Correct. Now, when you say, well, that's the goal, we're not gonna do that as an entire blanket. The way we're gonna pursue this is when we do a streets resurfacing, that's when it really kicks in. When we do a street resurfacing project, that all these ADAs will be upgraded. We're also eliminating any type of we've been eliminating dead ends that lead, in other words, sidewalks that lead to streets, lead to nowhere, into a driveway, for example. We've been proactive, very proactive with that. And it's a minimal, and this year what we're gonna do is just to be better. The ones we have left are really cumbersome because they're ending up in the middle of people's windows per se, when you walk. So we're gonna be cognizant to where we're gonna put these and to make sure we have communication with the residents. So while the goal was to basically reduce this program, we have increased it now.
So how much more is it to do a block now by having to do those extra curbs or whatever, do you know?
I'm gonna say, just off the cuff, probably a couple, $2,000 to $3,000.
And you think the government's gonna enforce this? Like what's the?
It's the city council, you know, it's up to the city council. Staff has taken the approach that it's the right thing to do. Now, is there an opportunity when someone calls, Department of Justice, whatever the case is, and says, hey, this isn't up to standard? And they come out and say, okay, well, you have to go back and finish up all this now.
And Dan, you're finding the towns are doing that, right? I
Correct,
think
that's
for-
the, yeah.
And I'm afraid more people are gonna trip on them as they're
Yeah, me too.
walking than.
Bikes,
Yeah, bikes and.
Intuitive,
mowers.
to your point, Jerry, that's something that we had discussed as well.
Wow.
We didn't come up with the recommendation per se. You know, we did it at 67th and Clarendon Hills Road, for example. Again, knowing that intersection has had concerns over the years, we wanted to make sure that everything was up to a standard there. So it's the city council's discretion if they want to remove it. You know, we've checked with insurance carriers, and again, it's a silent issue pretty much.
And Dan, that difference, if I'm reading right, I don't recall, it's 37.5, if I'm reading that right?
There's a couple components of it,
Okay.
yeah. There's the 200, I'll call it the 202,000 plus the 37,000. So it's basically, we're back to where we were with the sidewalks that we were removing and replacing.
Is this mandated from the government, from the feds?
Yes. It's an American Disabilities Act.
So is it a revision to the act? Because
It's been in place since 2021, I believe, where there's been a final ruling on it.
Because what they issued initially was what we did, and then they modified the ruling?
Right. No, yeah, the truncated.
It's concrete, this isn't like, it's not like Play-Doh, it's like,
The truncated domes, if you recall years ago, didn't have to be a different color. Then they were mandated, I believe, to be yellow. Then they had to go to a contrasting color to red. Then, pitch, the pitch and, whatever else, changed. So, again,
So, and again, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Right now, all of our sidewalks are ADA compliant based on original.
correct.
Okay. So in '21, somebody at the feds decided to come up with this idea to redo them again.
Bingo. That's in a nutshell without getting into a 3-hour discussion of all the committees and,
So what's the chance, I'm just throwing this out there, and you know where I'm going with this one, that, say the President of the United States get a hold of this and says, what the hell are we doing here?
Again,
And I'm being
this-
serious about this, you know?
that's one, Brian and I have discussed this ad nauseum. We've discussed this with the attorneys. It's really a probability, item number one. To me now, it became the right thing to do.
And did our attorneys advise the same?
Yes, it's the right thing to do.
So towns are, so what towns have done this, Steve?
Oak Park was one of them. I know that our engineer incorporates it into the plans that they use, the plans that they create for other towns. We don't use an engineer to determine which sidewalks need to get replaced. We used to years ago. $100,000 went to good cause after. If city council wants to, it's risk and probability is
So we
what it
have not
boils down
started this replacement program, but any new sidewalks that's gone in, like Clarendon Hills Road, is in adherence to this, the new stuff.
Right, any roadway that gets resurfaced,
And we'd have to do that anyways, that
Correct.
sidewalk area anyways.
well, not the whole sidewalk. Typically, on a resurfacing area, we may need to change out the curb and gutter, and we may need to change out the whole panel.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know it's like sporadic, like
Right,
some
yes,
people
yes.
get, you guys market the sides, some
Correct.
driveways, some curbs, whatever.
Was there,
That's a project that's already happening.
Yes.
Now, you're suggesting that we're gonna proactively, streets that aren't being touched, that you're just gonna practically go after these.
Just the roads that are being touched. The only roads that every year, I anticipate, this will be the first year it'll be the telltale of what the actual costs will be. It may be a little bit inflated, but this only touches the road, only touches the sidewalks that the roads are being resurfaced
So
for
like
this year.
almost $250,000.
Correct.
And that's not for all of them, that's just
No.
for the one. Oh, that's a lot of dough
To
right
do
me.
the entire city will take 12 years.
Pretty, yes and
And then-
no, because
but
there's a
then the
lot of
policy-
rural areas where.
Then the policy will change again.
So if they
Sorry.
find you in
By the time we're
violation,
done, the policy will change again.
but if we're in violation, I would think they would give us some time to remedy it and cure it, so do we just, I
Don't
mean.
kill
it
the
seems like-
messenger, believe me, this has
I
been,
understood,
yeah.
yeah, no, Dan,
No, you're doing the
no,
right thing, we're
you're-
not, we're just playing devil's advocate now.
We've, yeah.
You're the angel, we're the devils.
You know, at this point, not to turn it around, I mean, there's no
Bottom
good
line.
answer. And this is the best answer I think there is.
Dan, this is really I mean, building codes have ADA, building.
Oh, everything is, yeah.
Our accessibility, our programs have all of that, that's just what we live in now, and Dan and I did, I guess he said, beat this up. It was very clear in the language that IDOT, it says it's a requirement in IDOT, and there's some language about following IDOT standards, and, we concluded that, yeah, that's after a long discussion and a few people, that is a requirement
We'll start the day after
to follow.
Chicago does theirs.
What's the difference between the ramps that we have now and the ramps that are now?
You have to have, basically what needs to happen is if you see a ramp right now, that ramp basically needs to get removed. So it's basically 2 to 3 slabs from the curb and gutter back to where it intersects. That has to be removed, and now what you do is you pour a new sidewalk in with curbs that's integral with the sidewalk. Those are the ramp portions of it. And I've got the restoration accounted for this in here because the restoration is not as simple as, hey, let's throw a couple shovels of dirt, a little seed, we're done. We gotta build it up now. Because you're building that up, I believe it's, the height is a maximum of, has to be a minimal and or a maximum, 4 inches.
Above the sidewalk,
Above the walk, yes.
so somebody could trip over that.
Yes.
I'm not arguing that.
I have
I
no
see that being a
words.
bigger problem, yeah.
I can't, I'm sorry, I can't wrap my head around this. Maybe it's just, it doesn't make sense.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
You have to be Fed compliant, basically.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're liable for a lawsuit.
That's the
You hate
bottom
to say
line.
it, Susie. My name's Kevin Harms. I live in Darien, 7602 Linden. Been a resident since 1990. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you for going through this with us.
Yeah.
It's
Sticking
very
around.
interesting. But you have to be Fed compliant, otherwise you're liable for a lawsuit, and none of us want that. Do we? But as a taxpayer, I can see the craziness about it, but
Could change too.
So when this thing came down in 21, it came obviously from what, the EPA, the feds, or who did it come
It
from?
came through the feds, and again, I don't think it was really on a radar, at least with us. It may have been on radars with engineering companies, cause they always obviously get their updates and so on and so forth. So, I came about it by just through some literature, maybe I read too much, then started questioning, okay, well, why, what, how? And, you read these manuals and to me, some of them are ambiguous. It's a recommendation, it's a mandate, if you're doing this, then that, and if you're on an IDOT roadway, for example, any road that meets the frontage roads in our town on that road, we're actually mandated to do those for sure.
Well, which I can understand that, I mean, but the only IDOTs we have is frontage.
Correct, and there's probably 20 intersections, just, going by memory, 20 intersections that would have to be done. But those, I don't know when those would get done until the road resurfacing comes into play. So it's a plan, it's the best plan with the minimal costs that need to be put up front.
When it gets right down to it, I understand where you guys are coming from. We're all trying to, as we say, CY, cover our assets. I get it, okay? But the question is, I'd really, before we approve this, check with the feds one more time, because it just doesn't seem right.
Phone number's disconnected, the 1-800.
1-800-USA?
I forgot what it was. I have called that number numerous times, and it's in Washington DC as of 2 months ago.
I've been furloughed.
It's, 2 months ago now this
Guy who was
was.
supposed to answer the phone.
So,
Actually, the telephone line goes down into the,
Is it wheelchairs that are going off the ramp? What is the do you know
the
the
basis
basis
of it
behind
is, from my understanding, it's for the blind person. That has the ability to be able to locate the edge of the sidewalks when they're coming off to an intersection. Truncated dome basically means that they're coming to an intersection. Or going into an intersection, excuse me.
like I said, you hit it right on the head. If we have to do it, we gotta do it. But from some reason, there's gotta be, I don't know, it just seems something that's weird about this one. When you say ambiguous, 100%. We went ahead, we did what was right, we did the ADA, we've been doing that nonstop now for how many years? And then all of a sudden they say it's gotta be changed again, and
It's no different than our
know?
street name signs, for example. Our
We
street
could
name-
talk about this all night, Ted, we were as frustrated as you, but we really do need some direction, and that's the recommendation if you wanna.
I just, like I said, I don't mind proving it, but it's one of those things, it just sounds like there's,
Mary, you wanna do a straw poll?
I'd love to know the whole details on this, I really would. I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're looking for more details, Ted. Ralph, what's your thoughts?
I kind of feel that if you gotta do it, you've gotta do it.
Okay. Jerry,
I'm with Ted. I need more.
more
I mean-
details?
Yeah,
I mean, to me, you almost think that what you have there already is enough for somebody to know that it's a intersection. I mean, I have to know more.
well, there's no more details with the exception.
what
This is the
that- right.
mandate, it's the recommendation.
Or in the bumpy.
And that's what engineering is saying, attorneys are saying.
That's what I was saying, that if,
That's a tough pill to swallow, but if that's
Yeah.
what we're being advised to do, that's what I have to do.
like that.
I would
I
have
just
to
feel like
agree.
it's gonna, like I said, it's not like it's gonna be done after this year.
This,
It's gonna
having.
Yes,
be like rolling out for
Yes.
10 years, so.
So,
and that's just one
So the-
example.
I know,
Because we
I
have a
know,
grace, yeah.
but this is still gonna be flush here and flush there.
Correct, the problem is that we typically have to have we have two slabs, but this is only showing one, so that's one.
No, I completely get it, okay.
You have to do that and redo all of them, or just as you go?
This is as we go,
As
the
we go.
streets.
As we go with
know.
the street resurfacing
I
process.
think it needs to be in the budget today, whether we still go forward with it, we're still gonna have to vote on that, correct?
No, that's already approved, preliminary approval we did with the city council pending budget for the concrete program. So the concrete program is awarded because it's awarded, but it's not sent out yet, just based on the budget, so we can change whatever we want. The reason for that, again, is be the first kids on the block and get out and be done.
Mary, can we assemble some info, we'll send it out, same thing we looked at and.
I mean, I just found pictures on the internet, but if you can put something that we can visualize and see what we're talking about,
Yeah.
I think that would help everybody
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Do you have to do both slabs, or could you do the first slab to to be able to figure out where the sides are?
Well, you gotta do the
So
full.
you gotta do it where it intersects with another side.
Correct. That's the cost driver.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So Dan's gonna give us some more information.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to curb and gutter program, 4383. Any questions on that?
No ADA in there?
I think that was all eaten up on the one before that. Okay. I have a feeling, okay, so then the next one is probably going to have some questions. Capital improvements, infrastructure, 4390. We have the Southeast Plainfield and Cass retaining wall with the county. Back up on that is page 229.
So it shows 800, but I'm assuming we're gonna get back 400 on that, right?
That is correct. 400 plus, and I'd be more than happy to take the opportunity to explain this a little more. And a matter of fact, this is why also Kevin Harms is here this evening in regards to that wall. But I'll let the council ask questions if there's questions first.
What did we already approve on this? Because I know we've had this conversation a number of times.
500,000, 250 apiece.
It's going up,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, 250 per agency. That agency is DuPage County and the city of Darien.
Dan, my big question, I see the 800 on there, but in the narrative, it says the revised project estimates have increased to a total estimated cost of 850.
Correct. And the reason for that is that the county is picking up more. If I get into a discussion, I can address your point, Mike.
The county's picking up.
Okay, go ahead, Dan, please.
So again, this is, number one, the primary driver of this is some cost increases. When we did this conceptual project, we had looked at basically 2022 pricing. We put this got presented back to city council in 2023. We did an IGA. That IGA basically included costs for engineering as well as design and the build, and that build was to be at a total cost of $500,000. During the process, what we did is a little more thorough field study, and we had some canvassing. I canvassed some residents from a twofold. Number one was that no matter what, we did need this land, this 5-foot strip of land. We had gone back to the residents, and we ended up having to have an appraiser, a certified appraiser that deals with right-of-ways, independent, obviously. And they basically came back out, and there was 4 properties that were appraised at for the amount that was being taken. The amount that basically was being taken is about 5 foot from the back of that wall currently. So it's all been marked out. We negotiated with the residents, and preliminarily, we have a buy-in from all the residents at the assigned cost. The costs in that particular case have gone up as well. This is where, Mike, to your point, the county, and I'll have to back up a little bit, this is where the county said that they will pick up all the actual land acquisition costs, the plat of surveys, the legal expenses that are associated to the land deal per se. So that whole land deal, when it gets conveyed, that 5 foot will all be dedicated to the county. So they're willing to do that. That's where that additional 50. So backing up again now, what else was the cost increase? A couple of residents came back and said, hey, we have some drainage concerns over here. With these drainage concerns, this is again something that we were just talking about a little while ago, that's these 3 properties in particular don't have the opportunity to drain their rear yards. As a matter of fact, one had some concerns of flooding several years ago. With that said, we need to put this project, a drainage project, which this will be city initiated, still covered under part of the county, and we have vetted contractors that would be able to install a storm sewer that will get the water out to the infrastructure, in this case, Gale Avenue. So that was an additional cost that we had identified. In conjunction with that, one of the things that I had looked at and said, well, if we're gonna do all this work, this guardrail looks hideous out here. Well, the guardrail looks hideous out there. We needed to justify whether or not, to the county, whether or not the guardrail could be removed and replaced. We did a study with Christopher Burke Engineering, to which they justified that the guardrail could be removed, provided that we can move the actual sidewalk over. So now the sidewalk comes into play. That sidewalk gets moved over approximately another 5 foot, and now would be centered on the existing wall that you see there. So now you have removed guardrail, a turf area, the sidewalk, and another 2 foot buffer, where you're gonna have this brand new wall, concrete wall block, along with a 6 foot wooden type of fence with the water feature, which is what Jerry wanted. Just kidding. So,
Kenny won.
there you go, it's not here. So, in respect to that, we had a meeting with the county, because obviously the first thing was to be able to put the cost estimate together, and the county, number one, said, yeah, we appreciate the plan input, let's get a cost update. So we had a cost revision from Christopher Burke Engineering. With that said, DuPage County had taken it to their committee. The committee had approved the cost increase with, again, the additional funds of doing the land acquisition. In addition to this, they're gonna try to, it's being implemented that the radius on Linden be increased. We're never gonna get it to its size that it needs to be. So, again, that's the basic cruxes of it, so I'd be more than happy to answer questions. And Mary, I'm not sure if you'd like to give the resident any opportunity to have any type of input.
You've sat through this whole evening with us, please.
Okay, what's the reasoning, and I'm for the project, but I'm not the one who's affected by the standing water issue. That's the other three neighbors next to me. My concern now, if the project doesn't go forward, if you look at that, there's a wrought iron fence. If you walk along all the bottom of that wrought iron fence is all broken away. My concern is, in the summertime, you'll have kids horsing around up on that sidewalk, and God forbid, they should fall through the fence. Right now, the fence is broken away. I'm lucky the thing is even standing there, you know. As far as beautifying the city, I think if buying 5 feet of property, moving the wall, the sidewalk over, you have more of an easement area, beautifying that corner, because it does look nice with the new fountain and everything else. I think the project's a good deal.
Thank you.
So Dan, what kind of life is this thing gonna have?
Kind of life,
Is this thing gonna be good for 40, 50 years? Is this-
easily. The blocks that are out there right now, they don't even use those for retaining walls.
Because the costs have gone up a lot in the last year, I'm just wondering in the future.
25%.
Yeah,
Yes,
so-
so from that perspective, and the blocks that they're utilizing today are not your standard block. They're big blocks, such as we used up on Manning Road or Bailey Road, for
Right.
example. Those are the bigger blocks there for that project. So that's the new norm. And the wooden fence is a wooden fence that's either gonna be of IP, it's along the lines of a teak, if that's something that's more, pronounced to everybody. Non-maintenance, it's a natural color that, stays enhanced, if you wanna say, it's all tolerable. So those are all the things that has gone into this research, if you wanna say. And again, the parameters of this are roughly at Linden, because we gotta regrade everything. There's a blind spot there right now. And we also have trees that we're gonna be, re-landscaping area. We're taking a lot of trees down, and especially on the corner of Linden and Plainfield. So at the end of the day, I think it'll be a great enhancement from the other three corners. I think it'll be a benefit for the residents from a privacy and garbage that flows there over the fence. So that's kind of where it's at today. And like I said, we're getting a good buck back from Page County and their
Actually
support.
be safer down.
Oh, he's a lot safer.
Big time.
I'm sorry that I had to step out to use the restroom, but did you, because we had talked about this at length, that's why I felt like it was an okay time. Did you mention the guardrail while I was gone?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna reiterate what the mayor said, there's a huge blind spot, cause I'm right on the corner of 7602. If you go up that little incline, the way the fence is now, and I'm gonna take that tree out. Regardless if it goes through or not, the project goes through or not, the fence needs to be repaired. But I gave Dan my word, because right now there's a huge blind spot on the corner. I gave Dan my word, if the project doesn't go through, I'll still take that tree down.
Yeah, we'll work with you on that. That's not a problem, exactly.
But I know prior to the, in our packet is the agenda memo from the September 5th, 2023 meeting. And prior to that, I know I did and other officials at the time walked that property. And it was amazing how deteriorated it was then. And we're now looking at, I'm not gonna say 2 years later, but a significant amount of time has passed. And, clearly dangerous conditions and, I guess what if this does get approved, it seems like all the paths have been cleared with the residents, the purchasing of the 5 feet, like it could happen right away so that the costs, because costs obviously keep rising.
Right, right now, the order of protocol would be, if we have at least approval for this project, what we can start doing is working with the county on a modified IGA. So we would take the last IGA and just modify it with the new parameters. From there, we can start some, we currently have some funds in the budget today. So we're able to continue, but not one, and our expenses at this point are very minimal. I think we have 20,000 to date, if I'm not mistaken. Let's call it 30,000, of which half would be today covered by the county as well. So we can basically start finish up the engineering, get out to bid, I would say by May, middle of May, with the approved IGA first.
Yeah, I believe this is also part of our comprehensive plan, fix those, have those corners enhanced.
As far as I don't know if it addressed it specifically, beautification of the corridor, I would tend to agree with that, yes.
This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last time, that we pre-approve a project and the price goes up. And it's just something that we have to deal with. I agree that, I think this has to go forward. We do have 3 nice corners, and then we have the other corner. We have to fix it regardless. Let's fix it right. Let's do it right the first time and not worry about it for 40 years, rather than, and yeah, we may never see $400,000 from DuPage again.
Right.
So I think it's really, we don't have a choice. I'm not
Almost like
happy.
450, because they're gonna buy the land too.
I'm not happy about it, that it's up 150, but I don't think we have a choice.
I agree.
Anyone else on this?
Well, we need to go through with this because I've already thanked Deb Conroy and the county board for cooperating with us.
I take things back, so we could too if we had to. So, Mike?
On this particular item, but Dan, you don't even have to address this, I just note it. Marquee, Plainfield, and Cast, $2,000. That's in addition to the $5,400 I have coming from the other account, so it's $7,400 you need to sell advertising space to cover my costs on this.
That is correct. So that'll be the ROI of the net or the gross.
Any other questions on the Southeast Plainfield and Cass retaining wall? Okay, I think Dan, you're in a good place to
Thank you.
proceed. Okay, next item, back up page 238 would be the Sawyer Drive drainage. Is there any questions on that?
I think Jerry gave a good explanation as to why this is necessary.
Sounds
Yeah,
like
again,
it.
and if people don't want to participate, it has to be a big amount of people need to participate and do their share. If not, then
Yep.
I'm,
You've done your job.
yeah.
And this is what I want to preface that by. This is a classic example where a subdivision that was built did not have the opportunity to drain within the rear yards and then discharge to a front. In this particular case, majority of the water of the homes, I believe it's, and Jerry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's 8 homes, if I'm not mistaken, 8 or 10 homes. And of those 8, 75% of the water sheet flows back towards the front of the house. Regardless of what these residents did for themselves, that water would still have the opportunity to cross the sidewalks, go into the curb and gutter, and I'll give Alderman Legansky some credit that some of that water may have an effect of some of the water main breaks that we've had in the past over the years.
Because this year we've had, this
Yeah,
winter,
epic numbers.
yeah, we've only
Right,
had
so
one.
regardless,
Yeah, so
you know,
hopefully,
regardless, the infrastructure here.
well, the flooding too in the summer. I mean, in the middle of the block only has that one sewer. That entire area, you should people would have waters up to their.
Correct, there's a lack of,
It's crazy.
infrastructure, but at the same time, I don't wanna say that flooding, Jerry, will be, taken care of. We get a 25.
Understood.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that, we're,
It's not gonna be worse.
yes. So the infrastructure for that block is similar to what we did last year on Farmingdale. Without that infrastructure, we can't do anything. If we put that infrastructure in, we will give every resident there the opportunity to basically say, you're in now, you're gonna have a better price today than you will tomorrow. So in other words, it might cost you $1,000 today, but if we're not gonna put this inlet for you in if you're not participating. If you're not participating it's gonna cost you at least $3,000 to $5,000 next year when we're done. So again, we will vet every resident on there, but I think the infrastructure is something that needs to be installed.
How many homes?
I believe with this one, it's at least 10.
8 to 10.
I'd have to take a look at.
Farmingdale was 13, and like I said, 12 participated out of 13.
It's really immaterial because, the infrastructure, we know what the length of the infrastructure is and where it has to go from and to, regardless of the
Really,
participation.
and the only
levels.
residents that didn't do it is at the crosswalk, with the walkway, where they don't really have a problem because they've got the crosswalk, so, in the middle of the block, so.
Any more questions on Sawyer Drive drainage? Okay. We'll move on to street reconstruction rehab.
What's the Woodridge Fire one all about?
We try to promote, savings for other governmental agencies. In this particular case, Darien Woodridge reached out to us and said, hey, can you guys help us do the paving? We did it for the Sportsplex before, so on and so forth. But in this particular case, they want both of their stations they need to have them resurfaced. Obviously, they have 82,000-pound vehicles, so it's a little bit of a
They
different.
did that last year.
They did?
Yeah.
That's the concrete they did in front.
That's the
there.
concrete, and the whole front area was all done.
Yeah, this is not the concrete area. Again,
Was it in the back then area?
it's in the back and along the sides. Again, they approached us and,
Okay.
with the parameters. Well, they approached us with the parameters. We took some core samples. All this has been reimbursed. And we came up with a structural integrity formula, I refer to it as. That means X amount of excavation, X amount of this and that. And in this particular, there's 2 stations. The one is on Manning and the one that's on Lamont Road. So we put a cost together, confirmed it with the engineers, so there's a maximum cost. I'll call it an estimated cost to be able to do these. At the same time, based on that these are larger engines with larger weights on them, that I said, let's put a contingency in there. They actually had allocated more funds than we needed, so I had cut that back and told them it's all we need is $75,000 for contingency in there as well, so.
So they are putting money into it.
Yes, they are. That's at their total cost. There'll be an IGA coming up, one IGA for approximately $250,000, and the remainder will be ours.
Okay.
So is the Lyman just that much of a bigger area?
Sorry?
Is the Lyman,
Oh, it's a huge, yeah, because
Yeah,
it's
it's
a whole
just that
back
much
lot.
bigger, huh?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
square footage, whatever.
We're gonna combine them into one IGA, so there's no,
The fire school thing back there too.
that's
Well,
With
yeah,
the
yeah.
tower and all
The
that.
tower.
Yeah, except they don't use it. They were supposed to charge other municipalities for that tower training.
Yeah, this
They
is the
never did
one.
it. It's a big uproar in our area. That's a whole nother topic.
Any other questions on, I'm gonna move on. Any other questions on street reconstruction,
Get
rehab?
off of that one.
Okay. Last area, consulting, professional services, any questions there? Okay, everyone's back. Any questions overall that we need to discuss on the city projects fund budget? Not fun, but fun. It has been fun doing this with you all this evening. So, just to throttle back a little bit, we are gonna try to get a little bit more information from Dan on the ADA sidewalks, maybe some visuals and a little bit more explanation. And we, are gonna, going back to the very beginning of the evening, a little bit more, like a reduction we talked about on the holiday lights, and clean up in the description area about the mulching, all that. A little bit more research or confirmation on our status report on the grant for the tree replacements. And the capital projects, the reduction in interest income for years 2 and 3 that Mike brought up. Okay? Without further ado, if there's no more questions, we will close tonight's meeting, and we will reconvene next Wednesday, February 26th at 6 PM here. We will start off the evening with Chief Thomas, and then we will finish up Dan's budgets with water, MTF, and special service, and then we will dive into city council and admin departments. Anything else tonight? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.